Shuaixian, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. Shuaixian, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. The Shi Emperor had no descendants. Everyone knew that. The fifth prince became rather confused now that Princess Tian had suddenly mentioned he had a daughter. Don't ask about this anymore, okay? If Aunt learns that I disclosed this, she would never forgive me. Princess Tian became rather flustered. A sliver of panic appeared on her face. She knew extremely well just how great of a mistake she had made by accidentally disclosing this secret. The fifth prince and Jianchen realized the severity of the matter when they saw how frightened and flustered the princess had become, so they no longer asked about it. However, they, as sharp-minded people, could draw many conclusions from that small detail. Jianchen Shihao, don't tell this to anyone else, okay? This is one of the greatest secrets in the empire. There aren't many who know. Princess Tian was no longer able to remain as composed as before. Panic filled her face as she pleaded to Jianchen and Shihao. Don't worry. Shuaixian will never tell anyone about this. Right, Jianchen? The fifth prince swore. Jianchen nodded as well, promising to not disclose the secret. Princess Tian was no longer in the mood to stay in the Xindao Empire anymore after this had happened. She bid farewell to Jianchen in a hurry before leaving uneasily. With Princess Tian's departure, the fifth prince naturally did not stay behind all by himself. He gave Jianchen a jade talisman as a method of contact before leaving the empire as well. The fifth prince was extremely clever. He knew that the chances of roping in a supreme prodigy like Jianchen were almost non-existent, so he did not dare to mention the matter at all before Jianchen. He only wanted to establish a friendship. If they could become friends, everything would become far easier. Jianchen accompanied the prince and princess out of the imperial capital before returning to his residence. He thought about how the Shi Emperor possessed a daughter. I never thought the Shi Emperor was only taking revenge for his daughter by killing off so many primordial realm experts. When is this vengeance going to end, so I can return to the southern region sooner? Jianchen thought. He sat in his residence as he felt very worried. However, Jianchen's body suddenly jolted at this moment. A rather unbelievable thought had suddenly crossed his mind. He immediately thought it through and analyzed the matter quickly. Right now, basically no one in the Shi Empire knows that the Shi Emperor and his wife had a child. Even the authoritative imperial protectors of the Shi Emperor don't know. Then it's certain that the Empress did not fall pregnant in the Shi Empire. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hide it. It would have become public knowledge long ago. As a result, the Empress' pregnancy probably happened when they were being hunted down. It has been over 2,000 years since then. Also 2,000 years ago, the patriarch of the Mo clan picked up an infant girl outside and she possessed a jade pendant with the words, Shiyu, on her, with nothing else. I've seen this pendant. It's made from extremely tough material and is extraordinary. Even I would not have been able to damage it at all in the past. As a result, the person who managed to carve words into the pendant must have been extremely powerful. The time matches, the surname matches, and the gender matches as well. Surely Shiyu isn't? Immediately, Jianchen felt extremely surprised when he thought up to there. He felt disbelief. After hesitating slightly, Jianchen suddenly turned towards the direction in which Princess Tian and the fifth prince had left. He chased after them with his full speed. Outside the imperial capital, a luxurious carriage 9 exotic beasts towed quickly shot through the air. Several dozen guards with powerful presences stood close to the carriage. The leader was a god king. Princess Tian and the fifth prince currently sat in there. Shuaixian, can you tell me everything in detail? Since when did my uncle have a daughter? Why don't I know about it? The fifth prince asked out of curiosity. The luxurious carriage was also a treasure that had an extremely great defense. It was covered in formations, so it was impossible to eavesdrop on any conversations happening inside. I need to start from when my uncle and aunt were being hunted down by people. Back then, when they were being hunted down, the Empress accidentally discovered that she was pregnant. After giving birth to the child, my aunt made up her mind to abandon her, as she was out of choices and was unable to protect her newly born daughter. She hoped this could allow her daughter to survive, Princess Tian said slowly. Is that the case? I never thought that Shi Hao, would actually have a younger sister. What about afterwards? What happened to my sister? Is there any news? The fifth prince was greatly surprised before questioning in concern. Princess Tian shook her head. Her face was gloomy. The pursuit had forced aunt and uncle to extremely dire straits. They fled across the entire cloud plain, where they were so heavily injured that they almost lost their lives many times. The situation was so dangerous that they did not even know where they had abandoned their daughter. They don't know about her situation right now. It's just that after uncle became the emperor, he offended far too many people for his revenge, so they never dared to make the fact that they had a daughter public. They were afraid that their enemies would find their daughter first. As a result, they could only send trusted subordinates to scour the entire cloud plain secretly. However, it has been so many years, and there's still no news. Princess Tian looked at Shi Hao after speaking up to there. She said, Shi Hao, you understand how important this matter is, right? You can't tell anyone about it. Shi Hao nodded sternly. Shuaixian, I understand. I never thought there would be a secret side to the story of why my uncle changed so much and became so merciless. Now, I don't feel like my uncle has gone overboard at all. At this moment, a guard's voice rang out from outside. Fifth Prince, Princess Tian, Jian Chen has come running. He says he wants to see Princess Tian due to something important. Jian Chen has come running? What does he want to do? The fifth prince and Princess Tian were doubtful. Very soon, the carriage came to a halt and the prince and princess dismounted. They hovered in the air as they stared at Jian Chen, who had come running after them. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards the fifth prince before telling the princess, Princess Tian, can we step aside to talk about something? The princess nodded before immediately flying to somewhere far away with Jian Chen. The fifth prince stood with his arms crossed. He stared at them from afar and was filled with doubt. He mumbled to himself, That's strange. Jian Chen is suddenly looking for Shuaixian. In the distance, Jian Chen cast down a barrier that isolated sound before taking out an embroidered box from his space ring. He said sternly, Princess Tian, there's something I must request you to do for me. Please directly give this box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. Princess Tian accepted the box curiously. She examined it in her left hand and asked in confusion, Jian Chen, what is this? Just treat it as a little gift for the Empress and the Shi Emperor from me. They might like it. However, you must get the Empress or the Shi Emperor to personally see what is inside, Jian Chen said extremely solemnly, as if he was telling her to do something extremely important. Okay, I'll personally deliver it to aunt and uncle, said the princess before returning to her carriage and leaving with the fifth prince. Jian Chen did not leave. He hovered in the sky as he stared in the direction that the carriage had disappeared off to. He thought, although I also crafted that pendant on a whim, both the appearance and engravings are exactly the same as the pendant I saw from Shiyu, apart from the fact that the material is nothing special. If Shiyu really is the lost daughter of the Shi Emperor, they'll naturally recognize it once they see the pendant. If not, there's nothing for me to lose. It's not like the Shi Emperor and the Empress will be offended. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jian Chen decreased. It gave Jian Chen a few days of peace. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jian Chen decreased. It gave Jian Chen a few days of peace. However, during that time, the emperor of the Xiandao Empire had come looking for Jian Chen. He wanted to propose an engagement with Jian Chen, where his two daughters, Xinger and Lan'er, would be engaged to Jian Chen. Naturally, Jian Chen objected this matter, turning him down without any hesitation at all. Even though he had learnt that the two princesses possessed special constitutions from Fairy Haoyu, he had no such intentions. Aside from that, the Sky Cloud sect, one of the peak sects of the Xiandao Empire, had sent a god king to the imperial palace. He did not come asking for an explanation from when Jian Chen injured Zhou Chu and Fei He. Instead, he brought rich gifts and expressed his most sincere apologies, wishing to clean the slate between Jian Chen and the sect. Jian Chen understood that this was all because Fairy Hao Yu supported him, resulting in a deterrence, which was why the Skycloud sect was so willing to bow down. There were no great, irresolvable grievances between him and the Skycloud sect. He did not have any intentions of becoming their enemy either, so Jian Chen happily accepted the apology. Two other matters that shook up the entire northern region happened during this time. The first matter was that the first, second, and third armies of the Empyrean demon cult had created a huge massacre near the edge of the northern region in their attack, which directly infuriated the Empress of the Shi Empire. The Empress set out personally and single-handedly killed her way over, heavily injuring the vice leader who watched over the armies in the northern region. With that, the movements of the Empyrean demon cult came to a temporary halt in the northern region. The second matter was even more shocking. After being locked in a stalemate with the Shi Emperor for several days, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect finally came to terms with the Shi Emperor, handing over the two great elders who had once taken part in the hunt. The news that the heaven-cracking sect had come to terms created a huge shockwave among the various powerful organizations in the northern region. They were all astounded. The heaven-cracking sect also possessed a chaotic prime. Even the imperial family of the Shi Empire had to treat them with respect at other times. However, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect actually chose to give in to the Shi Emperor's forceful demands, handing over his two infinite prime great elders. The entire heaven-cracking sect only possessed 3 great elders. No one dares to refuse the Shi Emperor with his might. The Shi Emperor's prestige became even greater after this. People praising the Shi Emperor could be heard everywhere in the northern region. The matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has finally come to a conclusion. I hope the seal over the northern region will be released soon. Jian Chen sat in the imperial palace as he stared at the tremendous formation in the sky. He was secretly eager. I've completely refined the poison in these plant cores and monster cores. At this moment, Jian Chen heard Fairy Hao Yu's voice. She walked over slowly in a white dress and said, "It's best if you don't reveal them in the southern region. Behind them is a prince of the Blood Sun Empire. The status of the Blood Sun Empire in the southern region is equivalent to the Shi Empire in the northern region. You know what the consequences are." Jian Chen accepted the plant cores and monster cores from Fairy Hao Yu. They were all fist-sized and had become transparent after the poison within them had been refined. He could even vaguely see pure, powerful energy slowly move about. It was extremely lively. Fairy Hao Yu raised her head towards the sky. She stared at the barrier of light that sealed the entire northern region and said, "Since the matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has reached a conclusion, this seal shouldn't last for too long. Tomorrow, some people from the Shendao Empire will be moving against a large sect that they have grievances with. Once I complete this deal with the Shendao Empire, I will probably leave the Cloud Plain and return to the Moon God Hall." Fairy Hao Yu struggled to remain calm when she mentioned the Moon God Hall. Her feelings fluctuated slightly. It has been so many years. I wonder how the Moon God Hall is right now. Has my father discovered Nan Potion's schemes? It's a pity that the Cloud Plain is just too far away from the Moon God Hall. It's impossible to find any information about it here at all. A sliver of worry appeared on Fairy Hao Yu's face. Fairy Hao Yu, this Nanpatian must be very powerful, right? If the matters really develop to a point where all the odds are against you, just come back, Jian Chen said with hesitance. Although he did not know what was happening with the Moon God Hall, it was quite easy to guess a few things from Fairy Hao Yu's words. In the past, Nanpatian approached peak chaotic prime, but he was quite a lot weaker than my father. If Nanpatian comes to the Cloud Plain, probably no one can match up to him as long as Grand Primes don't appear. In the past, it was because I discovered his schemes against the Moon God Hall that I suffered to his hand. In the end, my body was destroyed, and my soul accidentally fled to the lower world. Fairy Hao Yu growled as killing intent flickered in her eyes. Jian Chen sank into his thoughts from that. After a while, he said seriously, "Fairy Hao Yu, I'd advise you to go to the Moon God Hall later. Increase your strength as much as you can first. If the moon god Hull really has fallen for Nan Potion's schemes, you won't be of any help even if you return given his strength. Fairy Hao Yu nodded gloomily. Of course, I understand that, but I'm running out of patience. It has already been so many years. No matter what the situation is, I have to go back to the moon god Hull to take a look. Otherwise, I won't be at peace. There was confidence in Fairy Hao Yu's words. Jian Chen also felt helpless when he saw how he could not persuade Fairy Hao Yu. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "Where's the moon god Hull?" Fairy Hao Yu glanced at Jian Chen slightly and said, "It's on the ice pole plain, the place where one of the 7 grand exalts of the saints' world, the ice goddess, stayed. It's also one of the 7 great sacred plains of the saints' world." Fairy Hao Yu paused before continuing. The cloud plane is extremely far away from the ice pole plane. Just the amount of 5-colored divine crystals needed to take the teleportation formation between planes is extravagant. It's enough to bring an ancient empire to its knees. Even Sister Tian Shuang can't afford this price. It's because I made a deal with the Xiandao Empire, where I would deal with one of their greatest enemies, that they're willing to provide me with enough divine crystals. In the morning of the next day, Fairy Hao Yu left with Tian Shuang and 2 other infinite prime ancestors of the Xiandao Empire silently. Soon after they had left, the formation that sealed up the entire northern region vanished. The Shi Emperor had finally removed his seal on this day. The moment the seal was removed, Jian Chen suddenly stood up in his luxurious hall. With a flash he arrived outside, and he looked at the sky. He had already waited too long for this day. Fantastic! I can finally leave the northern region, Jian Chen said excitedly as he stared at the sky. Without hesitating at all, he immediately went to find the emperor, wanting to leave through the teleportation formation of the Xiandao Empire. He was already filled with worry. Now that the seal was removed, he did not even have the time to bid farewell to Fairy Hao Yu. He wanted to return to the southern region as soon as possible. I wonder if Princess Tian has given the box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. However, I'm not certain whether Shi Yu is actually their daughter or not. It's just my guess. However, I clearly can't just wait here for the outcome of an unlikely guess. If she isn't their daughter, waiting here is just wasting time. It's throwing everyone from the Tian Yuan clan into danger. If she is, the Shi Emperor will definitely come to the southern region given his love for his daughter. As Jian Chen thought through this, he had already met up with the Emperor successfully. With Jian Chen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Chen remained the same. He personally took Jian Chen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Chen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. With Jian Chen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Chen remained the same. He personally took Jian Chen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Chen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. After stating the position, the teleportation formation immediately activated. With a powerful force, Jian Chen, who stood in the teleportation formation, directly vanished. In the prosperous imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the city of Sun and Moon, the streets were bustling as noises and shouts rang out. Smartly dressed officials or high-ranking members of organizations moved along the bustling streets with simply dressed cultivators. Endless stores filled the 2 sides of the streets and were crowded with people. As an ancient empire that was on the same level as the Xiandao Empire, the Heavenly Moon Empire naturally possessed an imperial capital that was no less impressive than the one in the Xiandao Empire. A few people with quite some status in the southern region gathered here. In the center of the city of Sun and Moon was a castle-like structure. People gathered in there in groups of 3s and 2s. Nearby, 4 extremely profound teleportation formations were carved into the ground. 2 of the teleportations were relatively smaller. They were roughly 10 meters in diameter. As for the other 2 teleportation formations, they were larger, a total of 30 meters wide. Not only were the pulses of energy that they gave off stronger, but the inscriptions were also more complicated and profound. All the people in the castle handed over different sums of divine crystals to an old man there before jumping onto the teleportation formation that was only 10 meters wide and leaving. The second teleportation formation of the same size would flicker with white light from time to time. Each time the white light dispersed, groups of people of varying sizes would appear. One was an entrance, while the other was an exit. Compared to the two 10-meter-wide formations, the two other formations were much more desolate. They would not be used even over several months. However, at this moment, one of the 30-meter-wide formations suddenly emitted a pulse of powerful energy. The energy was so powerful that it was several times greater than the two 10-meter-wide formations. The regional teleportation formation is responding. Someone is coming from another region. The regional teleportation formation is only used once every several years. It costs an astronomical amount of divine crystals every time. I wonder which great person has come from the other regions. For a time, the people in the surroundings all looked towards the teleportation formation as they discussed softly. Under everyone's attention, a young man who only seemed to be in his 20s appeared in the teleportation formation. He wore white robes and he concealed his presence. As a result, he seemed like an ordinary person. However, his resolute, handsome face possessed some coldness such that his ordinary eyes made many people present feel a frightening pressure. This person must be an expert. Many people secretly commented around the teleportation formation. Their gazes were filled with envy and respect. To no surprise, the young man was Jian Chen. Jian Chen did not stick around for long. Once he left the teleportation formation, he made his way outside the castle. He purchased a map in the imperial capital and hurried off after gaining his bearings. He did not waste any time at all. When he had chosen a path of retreat for the Tianyuan clan before, he had cast down a teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire. However, the teleportation formation was extremely distant from the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. As a result, he needed to hurry to where he had initially cast down the formation. Only then could he return to the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the shortest amount of time possible. As the ruler of the Dong'an province, the Tianyuan clan was clearly rather lethargic. A stifling atmosphere loomed over Tianyuan clan. This was because the patriarch who supported the clan had already vanished for many days. His situation was still unknown. Jian Chen was everything to the Tianyuan clan. Even though the clan possessed other overgods, they were nowhere near close to replacing Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen's disappearance had affected the clan greatly. I hope that the patriarch can return safely. The Tianyuan clan can't afford to lose Patriarch Jian Chen. At this moment, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the former patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, gathered together. Their faces were all filled with worry. Mo Xingfeng had now become a god after receiving a large number of resources from the Tianyuan clan, becoming an elder of the Tianyuan clan. Right at this moment, their faces froze. Their eyes widened as they stared ahead in surprise. The white-clothed Jian Chen slowly made his way out of the forbidden grounds. Patriarch? The three of them cried out in disbelief. At that moment, the three of them were completely puzzled. As everyone knew, the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan had been captured by the commander of the 7th Army, Yashi Lian. There was no news regarding his situation apart from that. But now, the patriarch, who was rumored to be captured by Yashi Lian, had just emerged from the forbidden grounds in perfect condition. The three of them found this rather difficult to understand. What's the situation at the front lines? Are Sacred Feather and the others fine? Jian Chen asked rather nervously with a stern face. He was afraid that something he did not wish to see had happened during the time he was away. Elder Sacred Feather and the others are well, and Elder Sacred Feather and Elder Houston have become overgods, Mo Ling said. He was overly excited, causing his face to become flushed. Jian Chen finally let out a breath of relief. He could not help but smile slightly before immediately charging off for the front lines. The battle continued near the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The tough walls had already completely collapsed, forcing the armies on the side of the divine kingdom to form lines of defense to stop the soldiers from the Empyrean demon cult. In this battle, The divine kingdom of Pingtian had used all they had. Not only had all the people from the divine kingdom sent more people from their clans, but even most of the guards had been relocated away from the royal capital. The royal divine army had been mobilized as well. Aside from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, the nearby divine kingdoms had sent large numbers of soldiers as well. They used spatial treasures to move them over from various places. They could only fend off the soldiers from the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult by pouring together the strength of several divine kingdoms. The divine king hovered in the sky as he looked around at the battlefield. He was not very optimistic inside, while his brows had remained furrowed the entire time. On the other side, Vice Leader Huayan stood with his arms crossed, hovering there leisurely. He smiled faintly as if victory was already in his grasp. He stared at the sky. Through his unique cultivation method, he could clearly sense invisible energy of souls gather in the sky. All of it was sucked towards the sea of blood at the headquarters. Most of the mission from the Grand Elder has been completed, Huayan thought. He understood very well that the Empyrean demon cult did not attack to invade this time. Rather, they attacked to create endless slaughter so that they could gather the energy of souls. Suddenly, Huayan's eyes narrowed. He stared behind the divine king. With his eyes as a primordial realm expert, he could clearly see a figure shoot over with lightning speed on a sword. It's Jianchen. How is he still alive? Huayan frowned. At the same time, the divine king sensed Jianchen make his way over from behind. He was slightly surprised, and soon afterwards he seemed to think of something. Understanding filled his face. "Greetings, your majesty." Jianchen arrived before the divine king very soon. He clasped his hands and bowed at the divine king. "Good, very good. As long as you're fine." The divine king nodded with a smile. Jianchen's return had cleared up some of the gloom within him. "Jianchen, where's the commander of the 7th Army, Yashi Lian?" Huayan growled. He suddenly experienced an ill omen after seeing Jianchen in perfect condition. Jianchen smiled with deep meaning when he heard Huayan mention Yashi Lian. He said, "Your Majesty, I just happened to have a small gift for you." With that, Jianchen immediately brought out Yashi Lian, who had been imprisoned in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. Right now, Yashi Lian's cultivation remained sealed, so she was unable to use her great strength at all. She was like a sitting duck in Jianchen's hands. "Yashi Lian." Huayan's face changed drastically as he cried out. Disbelief had completely filled his face. This was because the outcome was completely different from what he had imagined. It could be described as the exact opposite. Huayan moved very soon, flying towards Yashi Lian as quickly as he could. He wanted to save Yashi Lian from Jianchen. Primordial realm experts were so fast that Jianchen could not even react. "Huayan, if you take another step forward, I'll wipe out her soul," the divine king's voice rang out. He had already appeared before Jianchen silently with his hand pressed on Yashi Lian's head. With his strength as a primordial realm expert, he only needed to press down gently, and Yashi Lian's soul would be wiped out instantly. Even Huayan would not be able to save her in time. Huayan came to a halt when he heard the divine king's words. His face had darkened as he glanced extremely sternly at Yashi Lian, who had the divine king's hand on her head. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the end, Huayan did not dare to advance any further. However, he did not back off either. He glared at Jianchen and said coldly, "How impressive, Jianchen. I never thought you really did have some ability for even Yashi Lian to end up in your hands. There's a primordial realm expert behind this brat. If it weren't for her, how would he have been able to escape from me with just his own abilities?" Yashi Lian snorted coldly. Her face was calm and composed. Even though her life was in the hands of the divine king, she did not become flustered at all. "A primordial realm expert?" Huayan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, "I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts, but our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end." A primordial realm expert? Huayan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts, but our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end. Huayan stared at the Divine King at this moment and said, Ping, release Yashi Lian. The Divine King smiled and said, Huayan, looking at how much you're worrying, Yashi Lian must be quite important to you. As he said that, the Divine King could not help but press down harder on Yashi Lian's head. The laws of the primordial realm vaguely condensed as he threatened Huayan, It's not impossible for me to release Yashi Lian. Your Empyrean demon cult just has to retreat immediately. Retreat? That's completely impossible, Huayan said icily. His gaze was extremely cold, and there was heavy killing intent when he looked at Jianchen in particular. If it were not for the primordial realm expert behind Jianchen capturing Yashi Lian, why would he, Huayan, be forced into negotiating? This was all because of Jianchen. I can never let this Jianchen go. Even if I ignore how great of a problem he'll become once he matures, just what he has done to Yashi Lian cannot be forgiven. Killing intent filled Huayan inside. At this moment, he was even tempted to ignore the Divine King and directly try to kill Jianchen. However, Yashi Lian was in the Divine King's hands right now, so he did not dare to act recklessly. Since your Empyrean demon cult won't retreat, I can only lower myself to personally kill the commander of the 7th Army. With that, the strength of your cult will weaken, the Divine King said icily. It was filled with firm killing intent. He was also someone who could kill without hesitation. Since they could not come to terms, he had no need to keep Yashi Lian alive. Stop! Right when the Divine King was about to kill Yashi Lian, Huayan suddenly called out. The Divine King remained indifferent. Powerful laws had condensed around his hand on Yashi Lian's head. Huayan, have you through it through? The Divine King asked as he glared at Huayan. Ping, I'll be honest. You can't kill Yashi Lian, because if you do, your divine kingdom of Pingtian will definitely be annihilated. That's because Yashi Lian is a direct disciple of one of the 8 elders, the Fox Saint Elder. At the same time, she's the Fox Saint Elder's only disciple. You should be able to guess just how important she is to the Fox Saint Elder, Huayan growled. The Fox Saint Elder? The Divine King frowned. His understanding of the Empyrean demon cult was limited to only the branch on the cloud plane. Clearly, the Fox Saint Elder of the 8 elders had already surpassed the limits of the cloud plane. I never thought she would actually be the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder. Pingtian, we really can't kill this Yashi Lian because no one is the Fox Saint Elder's opponent in the southern region apart from the eternal Blood Sun Empire, including us ancient empires. At this moment, an ancient voice suddenly boomed out in the Divine King's head. The Divine King knew who the voice came from. He was a primordial realm ancestor of the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire. He remained with the imperial family. Thanks to his powerful soul, he was able to communicate with him from so far away. The Divine King thought quickly and said to Huayan, So what if she's the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder? There will be losses when the 2 armies clash. If the Fox Saint Elder really is bold enough to come, do you think the Blood Sun Empire will just stand by? Getting me to release her for nothing is impossible. Huayan became uneasy. After a very long pause, he said, Ping'an, getting me to retreat is impossible. However, I can give you 7 days to regroup in exchange for Yashi Lian. Huayan was out of choices with the current situation. Yashi Lian's identity was just too special. If something were to happen to her, he would not be able to bear the consequences. 7 days are too short. Give me a month, the Divine King said coldly. 10 days. Huayan also responded coldly. In the end, they agreed to a ceasefire of half a month. Although half a month was very short, the time would allow the side of the Divine Kingdom to greatly regroup, allowing them to deploy even more troops. With the ceasefire, both the battle between the overgods and the god kings stopped at that moment. They all returned to their respective bases. It was just that there were far fewer of them compared to the beginning of the battle. A third of all the overgods had passed away, while several god kings had died as well. However, when they saw Jianqun standing beside the divine king in perfect condition, many of them became deeply surprised. "Brother, this is fantastic. I knew you'd be fine." Sacred Feather arrived before Jianqun as soon as possible. There was excitement and joy on his face that he struggled to hide. Right now, Sacred Feather was covered in blood. There were many vicious and horrifying wounds on him. Behind him, Houston, Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu all let out a breath in relief when they discovered that Jianqun had returned safely. They all smiled from the bottom of their hearts. They were also injured to varying degrees. Heiyu was the most heavily injured out of all of them. "Let's go back first." Without talking too much, Jianqun vanished into the fortress with them. There was a military base within the fortress, and at the center of it stood several divine halls. Each divine hall represented a major organization. The Divine King had also placed a divine hall here for the divine kingdom of Pingtian as a place where his people could rest. Jianqun directly took Sacred Feather and the others into the divine hall. They directly made their way to a secret room. After that, he took out the best healing pills out of everything he had purchased from the Xiandao Empire. "These are all high-grade pills, so consume them and heal up," Jianqun said to everyone. They did not hold back, directly devouring the pills to heal their wounds and replenish their origin energy. "Brother, Sister Muir has been taken away," said Sacred Feather. He became rather depressed when he mentioned this. "What? Muir has been taken away?" Jianqun was surprised. His eyes shone with a shocking light as a powerful presence emanated from his body. "What happened? Who took Muir away?" "It's a sect called the Taoist Sect of Divine Sound." Everyone explained everything that had happened in a few sentences. "The Skyfire Plane, the Taoist Sect of Divine Sound," Jianqun murmured. Instead, he calmed down after learning about this matter. Then, he raised his head and stared at the ceiling of the secret room quietly. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate all, reaching into outer space. He seemed to see the distant Skyfire Plane that he had never even heard about. "Muir, I will come looking for you. That day won't be too far away," Jianqun secretly made up his mind. Jianqun took out a few high-quality saint artifacts and 3 supreme-quality saint artifacts afterwards for everyone to choose from. He had also purchased these saint artifacts from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. There were saint artifacts for both offense and defense. The Empyrean Demon Orb can attack and defend. "It's enough for me," said Houston. He only took some healing pills. "These items don't suit me," said Sacred Feather. In the end, only Ruijin, Honglian, and Heiyu picked out some high-quality saint artifacts to replace the saint artifacts they originally had. As their strength increased, the saint artifacts that they originally possessed basically were not very useful anymore apart from the bead that could block attacks to the soul. "Jianqun, it's rumored that the commander of the 7th Army took you away, but Yaxilian ended up as your hostage in the end. What's that all about?" Houston asked as he healed. "It's Fairy Haoyu who saved me. Fairy Haoyu has already recovered her strength to the primordial realm now." Jianqun narrated everything without going into too much detail. All the people gathered there because stunned when they heard that Fairy Haoyu was already a primordial realm expert. They all felt some disbelief. Back on the Tianyuan continent, Fairy Haoyu had been reduced to a soul. She was so weak in their eyes, yet now she had become a primordial realm expert in such a short amount of time. Everyone found the huge change to be a little unbelievable. The primordial realm was a cultivation level that they could only look up to in their eyes. It was insurmountable. "I brought quite a few things back from my visit to the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. They're enough to increase the strength of our entire clan to another level. Once you've mostly recovered, come to the Tianyuan clan with me. I want to reorganize the Tianyuan clan during the half a month of ceasefire so that we can truly toil about without worry on the front lines," said Jianqun. He thought back to how some unknown people had slaughtered members of the Tianyuan clan back when they were gathering materials for the teleportation formations. Before they found out who was behind it all, before they completely eliminated this potential problem, danger would always engulf the Tianyuan clan. As a result, Jian was always worried as the patriarch. He was afraid that something would happen in the clan when he was not present. The divine kingdom of Pingtian was not peaceful at all during the ceasefire. The divine king had personally decreed to mobilize all the soldiers in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, moving them all to the front line. At the same time, he began recruiting many soldiers in the divine kingdom as well. Moreover, the divine king communicated with the primordial realm experts of the heavenly moon empire through his soul, asking for even more reinforcements because the divine kingdom was unable to stop the armies of the Empyrean demon cult by themselves. At the same time, the divine kings from the neighboring divine kingdoms answered the divine king's call for reinforcements. They sent even more soldiers to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The walls at the front lines were being rebuilt as well. Several god kings worked together, reconstructing the long wall such that it reached the toughness of defensive saint artifacts. The Empyrean demon cult also replenished their soldiers in an orderly manner. Although people had died during the war in the army of 300,000, the Empyrean demon cult had far more soldiers than just the 9 armies. Behind the 9 armies was a reserve army. Once the 9 armies lost soldiers, the reserves would immediately replace them. However, for some reason, the 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult always remained as 100,000 people. It would never surpass that. A few days later, Rui Jin and the others mostly recovered from their wounds. Jian Qin immediately returned to the Dong'an province with them. The ancestors of the powerful clans in the Dong'an province came along as well, returning to the Dong'an province with Jian Qin. However, aside from Jian Qin's group, only 2 ancestors remained from the powerful clans. Jian Qin looked at the 2 last ancestors on the flying vehicle and sighed to himself secretly. He controlled the path of the flying vehicle quietly, directing it towards the Dong'an province. It was rumored that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, who was supposed to be captured by the commander of the 7th Army of the Empyrean demon cult, Yashi Lian, had suddenly returned. News of this spread across the entire province as soon as possible. As soon as the flying vehicle approached the provincial city, the city gates were already filled with people. Many people gathered there to welcome them back warmly. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan is a supreme overgod who can make onto the overgod's plaque. Even with the entire saints' world in perspective, these supreme overgods are famed. I never thought I'd be able to stand so close to a supreme overgod. He's a figure of legends. It's said that supreme overgods can kill god kings. This commander of the 7th Army sure is unlucky to come across a supreme overgod. Right? I heard that the commander of the 7th Army was captured by the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. Don't underestimate him just because he's still an overgod. Even capturing a god king is nothing difficult for him. There were many praises for Jian Qin among the warm welcome. Many people could not help but feel a deep sense of pride when the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan was mentioned. The flying vehicle directly entered the Tianyuan clan. All the elders in the clan had already been waiting for quite some time. When they saw Jian Qin and the others return safely, their faces all became filled with evident excitement and delight. Jian Qin leapt off the flying vehicle. Just when he wanted to say something, a light suddenly flickered through his eyes, and he stared at the residence that belonged to him sharply. There's someone inside. Jian Qin's heart shivered. He could clearly sense that something was moving around in his room, but he was unable to tell who it was through the senses of his soul. This person's strength completely exceeds mine. I can't sense them at all. Jian Qin's heart sank slightly. He felt slightly worried as he directly made his way to his residence. Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on could sense the change with Jian Qin. They looked at each other and followed behind him. Jian Qin directly pushed through the door and entered his residence. He knew that before an expert that even the senses of his soul were unable to detect, all his movements were under their control. Anything he did would not be able to escape their senses. As a result, he just did not make any preparations. He just waltzed in without trying to hide it at all. I wonder which expert has suddenly paid a visit to my Tianyuan clan. From Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the others' lack of response, they clearly don't know about the arrival of this uninvited guest, Jian Qin thought. He was troubled. However, after he walked in, he saw a white-clothed woman sitting at a table idly, eating the fruit there. He could not help but become surprised. "Fairy, how you?" Jian-Chen cried out subconsciously. Surprise had filled his face. Fairy How You sat there as she wished, biting into the fruit that was originally supposed to be for Jian-Chen. She looked at Jian-Chen as if she was smiling and said, "You're so careful even in your own clan. It looks like the famous patriarch of the Tianyuan clan doesn't have a particularly liberating life." Jian-Chen let out a sigh of relief. He ignored Fairy How Yu's snide comments and said, "Fairy How You, you've suddenly appeared in the southern region. It looks like you've completed the matters for the Xiandao Empire." Fairy How You stood up. With a wave of her hand, the door to the building immediately closed, locking Sacred Feather and the others who had followed Jian-Chen along outside. She described it like it was nothing. "This matter is something difficult for the Xiandao Empire to resolve, but it's a piece of cake for me. I've come to take a look at your situation here and also to bid farewell to you." Fairy How You continued, "Before I go, is there anything you can't deal with? Just tell me, such as that Earth Spirit sect or something." Fairy How You had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit sect stood on the same side as Jian-Chen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jian-Chen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit sect. Fairy How You had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit sect stood on the same side as Jian-Chen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jian-Chen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit sect. However, Jian-Chen shook his head instead, turning down Fairy How Yu's kind intentions. Although he knew that it would be far easier to obtain an explanation when he visited the Earth Spirit sect if Fairy How You took part, he felt like he had already owed her enough. He had helped her a lot in the past as well, but what Fairy How You had done in the past few years were more than enough to make up for it. Moreover, he did not want other people to deal with his problems whenever he encountered them. It would make him become reliant on others if it kept happening. That would not benefit him at all. "You and your stubborn head really won't budge, huh? I want to help you out, but you turn me down. Think about just how great of a price the Xiandao Empire has paid for me to do something for them. Do you think the Earth Spirit sect will take you seriously as a mere overgod? If it weren't for the fact that a primordial realm expert has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, making them want to avoid any trouble with him, how much longer do you think you can live? With your talent and the fact that you've fallen out with the Earth Spirit sect, they'll never let you mature successfully. Do you plan on relying on the Divine King to help you? Before I came here, I did some investigation. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect has already stepped into the primordial realm for several 100,000 years. He's not someone that the Divine King who has only recently broken through to the primordial realm can stop." Fairy How You stared at Jian-Chen as she said all that in a single breath. She seemed rather exasperated and frustrated. "Thank you for your concern, Fairy How You. I appreciate it." Jian-Chen clasped his fist at Fairy How You. "Why? You're driving me crazy. Whatever. Since you want to deal with it yourself, then deal with it yourself. Your life has nothing to do with me," Fairy How You said in annoyance. Her chest heaved slightly, and she was clearly quite frustrated. "Then, Fairy How You, please rest here for a while. I've just returned to the clan, so I still have some matters I have to deal with. I must bid farewell to you for now." Jian-Chen smiled brightly and left the room, leaving Fairy How You fuming in there. Afterwards, Jian-Chen gathered all the elders of the Tianyuan clan. He split up the things he had purchased from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire and set up an arsenal there. He left behind various pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and saint artifacts. Once the people in the clan reached a certain cultivation level and made a certain amount of contribution to the clan, they could enter the arsenal to pick something. The minimum requirement for the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts was over God, so no one could use it. As a result, Jian-Chen did not leave a single one of them in there. To Jian-Chen's pity, none of the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts were suitable for him. He had basically searched through all the stores in the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire, but he failed to find a supreme quality saint artifact that suited him. As a result, he still used the startling rainbow sword. After organizing all that, Jianchen took out 2 sets of formation banners from his space ring. He began setting them up around the Tianyuan clan. One set could attack, while the other could defend. Jianchen had paid an extraordinary amount of divine crystals to purchase the 2 God King level formations in the imperial capital. With the protection of these 2 barriers, he would be truly without worries for the clan as long as God Kings did not come. It would be able to stop all opponents below God King without any trouble at all. A day later, God King level formations enveloped the entire clan, giving off powerful pulses of energy. Jianchen stood in the clan as he stared at the 2 sets of formations that were already in operation. Finally, he revealed a somewhat victorious smile. He really could stop worrying about the Tianyuan clan now. I really don't have to worry either with these 2 formations, Xinjian uttered quietly as he appeared before Jianchen. He also stared at the formations. Afterwards, he looked at Jianchen and said sternly, "Jianchen, there's not much time left for me here. I will be leaving soon." "You're leaving?" Jianchen stared at Xinjian and asked in surprise. Xinjian nodded. "When I broke through to Overgod, I could vaguely sense a calling from the depths of outer space. Afterwards, as my strength increased, this calling became more and more powerful. It was just that you needed my help at that time, so I stayed behind. Now that these 2 God King level formations are protecting the Tianyuan clan, there's no more point in me staying. It's time for me to go." Jianchen fell silently. Ever since he had come to the saints' world, he had been with Xinjian. They had been together from the puny deities they were in the very beginning to the current overgods that ruled over an entire region. Now that Xinjian had to leave all of a sudden, Jianchen felt rather unwilling to part with him. What they had gone through in those years had already forged a deep friendship between the 2 of them. They were like close brothers. Once they separated, it would definitely be a long time before they met again. They had no idea when that would happen. As a matter of fact, they did not even know whether they would be able to meet each other again or not in the saints' world that was filled with danger. "When do you plan on leaving?" Jianchen asked with a rather heavy heart. "I plan on leaving after this war." Xinjian stared deeply at the sky and said indifferently. In the blink of an eye, over half of the period of ceasefire had passed. The next morning, Fairy Hao Yu called Jianchen over. She directly cut to the chase after seeing Jianchen. "I plan on visiting the branch of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. Are you coming along?" Jianchen was surprised when he heard that. He said, "That's the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. That's basically the belly of the beast. It'll be extremely dangerous. What are you going there for?" "It's just a branch. Even if it's the belly of the beast, that only applies to regular infinite primes." Fairy Hao Yu continued, "The Empyrean demon cult has divided itself into 3 and is attacking 3 different regions at the same time. Their actions can't be as simple as just taking over territory. I think there must be some other secret hidden behind these wars. As a result, I plan on investigating it to see what they're doing." "You'll offend the Empyrean demon cult by doing that," Jianchen said with some worry. Even Tian Shuang hoped that Hao Yu would not become involved with the matters of the Empyrean demon cult. Naturally, he wished that Fairy Hao Yu would not offend the Empyrean demon cult either. The Empyrean demon cult was an extremely powerful organization. It was enough to make all the organizations that stood at the peak of the Cloud Plain feel fear. Any accidents would even lead to trouble for the Moon God Hall. Fairy Hao Yu rolled her eyes. "Since when did you become so fearful? The Empyrean demon cult is indeed powerful, but I'm not afraid of them. Moreover, I'm just going in to have a look so that I can understand what they're doing. It's not like I'm destroying their entire branch. And right now, their 3 vice leaders just happen to be out. It's a perfect time to infiltrate their headquarters now that it's empty." Jianchen hesitated for a while before making up his mind. "All right, I'll come with you to have a look then. I want to see just what hidden secret there is for their wars against everyone." Infiltrating the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain was definitely a bold and risky move. This was because no one from the 6 ancient empires of the southern region possessed that ability. However, the Blood Sun Empire feared the Empyrean demon cult, so even if they had supreme experts, they would not do something like that. Only Fairy How You possessed both the strength and courage to target the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult directly. The headquarters must be covered with formations. I can get through them, but it'll be quite difficult to do so all by myself while not creating any disturbances. As a result, I need you to find 3 other people to come along aside from you. I'll teach the 4 of you the moonlight illumination formation so that you can assist me, added Fairy How You. Jianchen became rather hesitant after he heard Fairy How Yu's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, "But the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength?" Jianchen became rather hesitant after he heard Fairy How Yu's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, "But the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength? I don't need you to break through the formations. I only need the 4 of you to create the moonlight illumination formation to cover the disturbance I make," said Fairy How You. Jianchen pondered over the matter seriously and said, "All right, I'll go contact them right now." Jianchen left soon afterwards. He called in Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Houston, sternly telling them the situation in detail. What? Fairy How You wants to infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult? Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Houston were all shocked. They became extremely stern. That's right. Fairy How You should possess the ability to do so. However, she needs our help to not alert anyone when she breaks through the formations. Are you coming? Jianchen asked seriously. Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather said nothing. What Fairy How You wanted to do stunned them. In their eyes, she was simply too bold. Shenzhen said after a while of thought, "With the current situation, it's impossible for our war against the Empyrean demon cult to end quickly. If the war continues, it'll be extremely bad for everyone. Even we ourselves may die if it is prolonged. If we can enter the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult and tamper with some things through Fairy How You, we might be able to end the war sooner." Jianchen, when do we move? Houston asked. Clearly, he had made up his mind. In the end, Sacred Feather expressed his thoughts as well. He had basically grown up with Jianchen, going wherever Jianchen went. Even if he knew that certain death awaited him, he would not hesitate at all. Before we go to the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, we need to learn the moonlight illumination formation, said Jianchen. Afterwards, Jianchen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on told everyone that they would be in seclusion to heal and that no one was to disturb them. They also activated the God King level formations to envelope the entire clan before leaving the Dong'an province with Fairy How You silently. In an ancient mountain range extremely distant from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, there was an extremely well-hidden gorge. It was several thousand meters deep, and a thick layer of vegetation covered its entrance. It was very difficult to discover its existence from the outside. The gorge was triangular in shape, where it was narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. The entrance was only around a dozen meters across, while the bottom of the gorge was several thousand meters wide. At this moment, gentle moonlight illuminated the depths of the gorge that were supposed to be pure black. Powerful pulses of energy emanated outwards, forming a tremendous pressure that crushed all the plants at the bottom of the gorge to pieces. It had been 3 days already. Jianchen, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather currently stood in a special position, creating a formation. A white light completely composed from moonlight force covered a range of several thousand meters from them. The 4 of them bathed in the gentle moonlight as it glistened. However, at a closer glance, it was quite obvious that this moonlight force did not originate from their own powers. Instead, it all originated from a crystal in their hands. The 4 of them controlled the moonlight force in the crystal to create the moonlight illumination formation together. Fairy How You hovered in the air. She stared at the formation from the 4 of them nearby and said, "There are basically no problems left with the moonlight illumination formation. The formation cannot defend or attack at all, but it can reduce all the disturbances from anything that happens within it to nothing. As long as it doesn't exceed the limits of the formation, even the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult won't be able to sense what happens in the formation. With the assistance of this moonlight illumination formation, I have complete confidence that we can infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult without alerting anyone. Let's go then. It's time for us to set off. Afterwards, the 5 of them left the hidden gorge and directly headed towards the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the cloud plain. There was a region of extremely desolate plains in the southern region of the cloud plain. The sky was filled with endless darkness, where sunlight never reached, while the ground of the entire region was crimson. It was all dark red as if it had been watered with blood. The place seemed to be in eternal darkness. In the depths of the desolate and deathly silent lands stood a majestic castle. The castle was extremely large and completely dark red as if it had been covered by blood. Even without getting too close to it, a heavy, metallic smell of blood would seem to be present. The smell of death filled the surroundings. Coupled with the chilling winds that shrieked like ghosts, the castle in the darkness seemed even gloomier. It would make people shiver. Originally, there was no wind in the surroundings of the castle. It would be terrifyingly silent. However, with the war that had occurred recently, wind appeared in its surroundings. If someone possessed extremely sharp senses, they would even be able to sense the chilling winds constantly revolve around the top of the castle. It formed an invisible swirl there. It was as if something there was sucking in the shrieking winds. This castle was the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult branch on the cloud plain. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult was a forbidden region for the experts of the cloud plain. Even infinite primes would not approach it so easily. However, a faint figure flickered through this world of darkness at this moment. She seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, where even god kings would not be able to detect her existence. With a single flash, she had already approached the castle silently. As the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, its security was especially tight. Layers of formation hidden in space engulfed both the interior and the exterior of the castle. There were even formations at the level of primordial realm experts among them. However, the formations only acted like furnishing to the person fused with space. They were unable to do anything at all. In the end, the figure approached the castle easily. A large group of soldiers were currently gathered under the lead of a god king outside the castle. At this moment, the gates of the castle suddenly swung open. A white-robed man strode out with his arms crossed. His pale face possessed some femininity, making him pretty like a woman. His appearance was enough to make people steal a few extra glances helplessly. "Greetings, Protector Tsing." The god king in front of the army saw the white-clothed man and immediately bowed. The man nodded and said coldly, "Vice Leader Huayan has orders for you to set off immediately. Remember, you must complete the Vice Leader's mission cleanly. Leave the Divine Kings to the Protectors from the Hall of Protectors." "Yes, sir." Protector Tsing did not discover that just when he opened the gates of the castle and walked out, a faint flash had drifted past him just a few meters away, vanishing into the castle. In an extremely quiet, hidden place within the gloomy castle, the white-clothed fairy Hao slowly revealed herself from the surrounding space. She stared ahead and could not help but frown. She murmured, "The formations in the castle are indeed much more powerful than the ones outside. They're on 2 completely different levels. In here should be the place where the Empyrean demon cult is truly trying to protect. The formations outside were probably only set down by the vice leaders casually. I need to rely on their moonlight illumination formation to pass through these formations without alerting anyone." As she said that, the bright moon divine hall that had shrunken to the size of a palm sat in her hand silently. With a thought, several streaks of white light immediately came out from the divine hall, turning into 4 figures. They were Jian Chen, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather. "We're already inside the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. Follow me closely and don't make any sounds, so we don't get exposed," Fairy Hao warned the people behind her. All 4 of them nodded sternly. They understood that they had truly entered the belly of the beast now. Danger was all around them. I already sensed it outside that the true secret should be hidden on the top floor. Right now, formations protect the entrance to the next floor. Use the moonlight illumination formation. I'll get through these formations, Fairy How You said to the 4 people behind her secretly. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shun Jian looked at one another and immediately got into action. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shun Jian looked at one another and immediately got into action. From the previous practice, they had already developed a tacit understanding, so when they cast the moonlight illumination formation, they were able to do it without much effort at all. They were extremely well versed at it. Very soon, the 4 of them cast down the moonlight illumination formation perfectly. Pure, glistening moonlight force surrounded their bodies. A barrier completely condensed from moonlight force appeared around them, covering a range of several hundred meters. Even though the formation was completed, there was not the slightest pulse of energy apart from the light that shone as brightly as the moon. As a result, the moonlight illumination formation could only be discovered through sight. It was impossible to find it at all through the other senses, including the senses of the soul. The moonlight illumination formation could not attack or defend. Its only usage was to cover up everything within the formation. Of course, the premise was that it did not surpass the formation's limits. Fairy How You no longer hesitated either when she saw that the moonlight illumination formation was complete. She immediately began to smash through the formations. She was slightly stern. Primordial realm laws descended on her, and all her movements possessed devastating power. However, since it was purposefully suppressed, this primordial realm power did not erupt. She concealed it perfectly. Fairy How You got through the formation extremely quickly. In under a minute, there was a hiss, and a hole gradually appeared in the formation that blocked the path to the next floor. It revealed a dark passage. Chilling winds whistled through the passage, and it was filled with a demonic aura. A demonic aura that was especially pure and dense flowed out from the passage. To avoid attracting attention, I've only created a temporary entrance through this formation. It will close up by itself very soon, so come on in, Fairy How You said to Jian Chen and the others. With a wave of her hand, moonlight force appeared, and all the demonic aura in the passage was instantaneously dispersed. With a flash, she entered the passageway that led to the next floor. The 4 of them immediately removed the formation and disappeared into the passage with a flash. Soon after the 4 of them had entered, the hole in the formation completely closed up, returning to its previous state. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult only seemed like a huge castle from the outside. Inside, it was so large that it seemed to be composed of miniature worlds. The space on each floor had completely surpassed the castle's size. In particular, the halls, secret rooms, and so on all seemed to possess worlds of their own. The castle was filled with formations. Every single one of them was extremely powerful, either set up openly or hidden in space. Just the pulses of energy they gave off were enough to make the 4 of them to shiver. With their strength, they did not even dare to expand the senses of their souls because they were afraid that they would not be able to sense a God King hidden somewhere and hence expose themselves. As a result, the 4 of them could only follow behind Fairy How You. Along the way, the 4 of them avoided all the dangerous regions and the patrol of God Kings under Fairy How You's lead. They advanced through the headquarters silently, without raising any attention at all. It had to be mentioned that the security of the headquarters was extremely tight. Ordinary infinite primes would face life-threatening danger if they infiltrated here. However, Fairy How You was no ordinary infinite prime. There was no fear or danger under her lead. As they traveled deeper in, they gradually approached the core region of the headquarters while Fairy How You's face had gradually become stern as well. This should be the entrance to the next floor, but there's an extremely powerful formation hidden here. Fairy How You stopped at the end of a hallway. She stared ahead as a sliver of seriousness appeared on her face. There is a trapping and killing formation, coupled with an illusionary formation in there. The formation is so powerful that even 7th heavenly layer infinite primes will probably be done for if they get caught in there. It looks like the area above should be the most important part of the headquarters. Maybe the real reason why the Empyrean demon cult is waging so many wars is in there, Fairy How You said sternly. After studying the formation for a while, she said confidently, however, this formation still can't stop us. It's just that getting through the formation might create a disturbance so great that the moonlight illumination formation can't cover it. Fall into formation. A while later, Fairy How You made up her mind. Please wait, Fairy How You. Houston said all of a sudden. He seemed uneasy. Fairy How You turned around to look at Houston. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather all looked at him as well. What's wrong, Uncle Xiao? Jian Chen asked in confusion. Houston stared at the formation up ahead. After a moment of silence, he said, maybe this isn't the right path. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather immediately became surprised. They looked at Houston doubtfully. Even Fairy How You stared at Houston in surprise. She asked, how do you know that it's not the right path? Because of this. With a thought, a thumb-sized orb gradually floated out from his forehead. The orb was completely blood-red as if it had been condensed from blood. It was demonic and seemed slightly sinister. It was the Empyrean demon orb Jian Chen had originally given to Houston. Fairy How You studied the Empyrean demon orb for a while and said, this is a demonic god artifact of quite a high quality. It looks like you've gained the artifact spirit's recognition since you are able to use this god artifact with your current strength. Houston nodded. He had learnt about the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb long ago. He said, the artifact spirit just told me to take another path. After a moment of thought, Fairy How You said, then lead the way. The five of them changed their path. Houston was responsible for leading them afterwards, allowing them to directly travel towards where the Empyrean demon orb told him to go. Before long, the five of them stopped. It was not because they did not want it to stop, but that they had reached a dead end. They had run out of places to go. There's no formation here. It's a dead end. Fairy How You furrowed her brows after studying the surroundings. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to shine with a dazzling red light that surrounded all of them. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather's eyes. The sudden movement from the Empyrean demon cult had filled them with cautiousness. Even a sliver of surprise had appeared on Houston's face because he was not responsible for this. Instead, it was the Empyrean demon orb's own response. This was somewhat beyond Houston's control. Only Fairy How You remained composed, where her face did not change at all. This was the confidence that came from her great strength. However, in the next moment, all their eyes narrowed, including even Fairy How Yu's. They all stared ahead in surprise. Under the red light from the Empyrean demon orb, the scene before them changed. The stone wall that originally stood before them had actually vanished, turning into long, narrow, and winding passage. It was dark red in there, and it gave off a gloomy presence. What a great formation! I actually completely failed to sense it, Fairy How You frowned. She stared at the winding passageway and murmured. The light in her eyes flickered. She looked at the Empyrean demon orb in thought and doubt. This should be the correct path. Houston stared ahead. After studying it for a while, he called everyone. They advanced under the red glow of the Empyrean demon orb. Along the way, all of them remained within the Empyrean demon orb's range. They discovered that they could only pass through the illusionary formation that even Fairy How You had failed to sense if they remained in there. Once they left its range, a dead end would appear once again. The stone wall that blocked their path seemed completely real, where it felt stiff and heavy if touched. When they passed through the illusionary formation with the Empyrean demon orb, it was like they were leaving their original world and traversing to a completely different place. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to tremble heavily. Its red light began to flicker as well. Swish! Suddenly, the Empyrean demon orb turned into a red streak of light, completely breaking free from Houston's control. It shot off into the distance all by itself. Oh no! I can't control the Empyrean demon orb. Houston's face changed. They were in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, so danger lurked around every corner. If they created too great of a disturbance, they would be exposed. Chase it, Jian Chen called out, and they immediately pursued the Empyrean demon orb. After all, the Empyrean demon orb was a god artifact and one with an artifact spirit. It was impossible for Jian Chen and the other overgods to chase up to it with its speed. In just a short while, they grew further and further away from the orb. If it were not for the vague connection between Houston and the Empyrean demon orb, they probably would have lost track of it completely. Don't resist, I'll take you with me. At this moment, Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out. With that, gentle moonlight force revolved around the four of them. After that, their speed suddenly exploded, and they pursued the Empyrean demon orb at an extremely terrifying pace. They moved so quickly that Jian Chen and the others were not even able to see their surroundings properly. As a streak of red light, the Empyrean demon orb quickly flew through the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. However, as it was a god artifact, it was unable to move around the headquarters as silently as Fairy Hao Yu. As a result, it gave off pulses of energy and the presence of a god artifact as it flew. Naturally, many people discovered it. Who is it? Quite a few shouts rang out in different places within the headquarters. At the same time, powerful senses of the soul swept out from all directions, directly locking onto the flying Empyrean demon orb. It's a god artifact. Whose god artifact is it? Why have I never seen it before? It doesn't belong to our Empyrean demon cult. Oh no, someone has infiltrated the headquarters. Immediately, people flickered in the surroundings. God kings either emerged from secret rooms or space covered by formations. They hurried over from all directions as they pursued the Empyrean demon orb. The headquarters have been infiltrated. Quick, contact the vice leaders. An elder god king hovered in the air. His eyes shone brightly. He locked onto the Empyrean demon orb with the senses of his soul as his voice rang through the entire space. However, the castle was covered in formations inside and there were several spaces. The region where Jian Chen and the others had entered with the help of the Empyrean demon orb clearly belonged to another space within the castle. As a result, the elderly god king's voice only rang through there and not the entire castle. However, even with that being the case, the elderly god king managed to alert all the god kings around. But at this moment, the white-clothed Fairy Hao Yu appeared silently behind the elderly god king. She placed her slender, white hand onto the god king's head and pressed down gently. With a bang, the god king's head exploded loudly. His soul was directly wiped out. He was a mighty god king, yet he had just died like this. He could not put up any resistance at all. He did not even know who has killed him before he died. Fairy Hao Yu hovered in the air. Moonlight force revolved around her. She stared at the surroundings coldly and formed a seal with both hands. A circular palm-sized moon hovered from her hands. The energy it possessed was so terrifying that it was enough to devastate the surroundings. It made Jian Chen and the others pale in shock. In the next moment, the moon suddenly shattered, turning into several dozen finger-sized strands of moonlight force. Like arrows, they shot into the surroundings with frightening might. Spurt! 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 In that space, the moonlight force struck all the god kings that had revealed themselves without any exceptions. Before they could even cry out, their souls were shattered and dispersed. At that moment, the entire space fell quiet. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shun Jian stood behind Fairy Hao Yu. After personally witnessing Fairy Hao Yu killing so many god kings with ease, they all felt deeply shocked. Even though they knew primordial realm experts were very powerful, they could not help but feel astonished when they personally witnessed the might of one. These god kings were not weak. Any single one of them would be far more than what the four of them could handle. They would not even be able to escape. However, they were so weak before Fairy Hao Yu. God kings were truly like ants. We have already been exposed. The three vice leaders should return very soon, Fairy Hao Yu said gently. Originally, she was confident about infiltrating the headquarters completely silently, without raising any attention. However, the Empyrean demon cult had foiled all of this. However, Fairy Hao Yu did not bicker over the matter. She hurried off with Jian Chen and the others, directly chasing after the Empyrean demon orb. When Fairy Hao Yu caught up to the Empyrean demon orb, the orb had arrived beside an extremely huge pool of blood. The pool of blood really was tremendous. It was like an ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see. Huge waves would churn in the sea of blood, striking the space as waves stretched several hundred meters tall, creating great booms. Chilling winds blew in the sky above the sea of blood. It formed an extremely great swirl. Vaguely, countless faces seemed to appear and wail out. This seemed like living hell. It was terrifying and horrifying. Jian Chen, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather stood at the edge of the pool of blood. They gazed at the boundless ocean, and they were all very stern. This should be the greatest secret of the Empyrean demon cult. They're waging wars to create this. Fairy Hao Yu stared at the churning sea of blood. Afterwards, she stared at the whistling winds in the sky, and after a moment of thought she murmured, "They've created an ocean from blood and condensed 9 blood beads through a formation by absorbing the energy essence from the blood. They've also gathered all the energy from the souls of the death, extracting their essence to refine 9 soul beads through these formations. What is the Empyrean demon cult trying to do?" "What blood beads and soul beads?" Jian Chen asked. He also studied everything before him, but he found nothing aside from the sea of blood and the chilling winds. There are 9 blood beads that possess great energy at the depths of the sea of blood, while the chilling winds in the air are not actually wind. It's the energy of souls drawn over by formations, and there are also 9 soul beads in the energy of souls. "You can't see these things yet with your strength," said Fairy Hao Yu. Jian Chen said grimly, "Has the Empyrean demon cult been waging wars to collect blood and energy of souls to condense these blood beads and soul beads? Why would they do that?" Fairy Hao Yu shook her head. "I'm not certain about this. The essence of energy in the blood beads can allow the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, while the energy of souls in the soul beads can power up a person's soul. However, they're all condensed from low-level cultivators in the end, so the effects are almost non-existent to high-level cultivators. There's no need for the Empyrean demon cult to go to such lengths for all of this with their current strength." Fairy Hao Yu looked at the surroundings of the pool of blood, and she became stern. She said grimly, "Moreover, there's an extremely powerful formation that protects the pool of blood. It's so powerful that it frightens even me. If a person falls into the formation, they're done for even if they're a chaotic prime. It looks like this pool of blood is much more important than anything else in the Cloud Plane branch of the Empyrean demon cult from how powerful the formation is. I really don't think there's anyone else with the ability to cast down such a terrifying killing formation in the Empyrean demon cult apart from their legendary Great Elder." Jian Chen's face changed slightly when he heard Fairy Hao Yu mention the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. He stared at the pool of blood and said grimly, "Did the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally create this place?" The Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult was an existence that even the peak clans of the Cloud Plane feared. If it were not for his deterrence, it would be impossible for just the 3 infinite prime vice leaders of the Cloud Plane branch to create such a great disturbance. As a result, as soon as he heard that the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally created this place, Jian Chen struggled to keep his composure. At this moment, the boundless sea suddenly became even more turbulent. Even the chilling winds formed from the tremendous energy of souls grew stronger. The light in Fairy Hao Yu's eyes flickered. She stared at the sea of blood ahead and said, "The Empyrean demon cult is currently massacring lives. They're using all those lives to condense the 9 blood and soul beads so that the 9 blood and soul beads can constantly absorb the essence from the sea of blood and the energy of souls to reach higher qualities. If these blood and soul beads aren't removed, the massacre of the Empyrean demon cult will not stop. They will continue until the beads reach a state that they are satisfied with. Fairy Hao Yu, can we remove these 9 blood and soul beads so that the Empyrean demon cult won't continue like this?" Jian Chen asked. Fairy Hao Yu shook her head powerlessly. She sighed gently, "The formation that protects this place is too powerful. I am powerless before it." At this moment, The Empyrean demon orb that originally floated there without moving suddenly arrived above Houston. A blood-red light fell from the orb, completely surrounding Houston. Houston had already established a vague connection with the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb. When the light covered him, a thought from the artifact spirit entered his head at the same time. Houston's face froze before becoming surprised. He raised his head and stared at the Empyrean demon orb with some astonishment. After a moment of hesitation, he said to everyone, "The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that I can directly ignore the obstructions of the formation and enter the place." Fairy Hao Yu's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, she turned towards Houston, or more accurately, the Empyrean demon orb above Houston. After staring at it for a while, she said to Houston, "You must know that the formation is so powerful that even chaotic primes may die. If you really do enter the formation as the artifact spirit has said, even I won't be able to save you once your life is in danger." "Uncle Xiao, you must not risk it." Jian Chen voiced his objection. He deeply understood just how terrifying the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult was. He also did not believe a god artifact would be able to cross through a formation cast down by an expert that powerful. That was unless the Empyrean demon orb possessed great origins, making it almost heaven-defying like the Anatta Tower. However, he had heard that the Empyrean demon orb was just the famed treasure of the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. Although it was a god artifact, it was still quite far off from the apex. Shen Jian and Sacred Feather both tried to stop Houston as well. They did not want Houston to take this risk, where he would have to leave his life to the hands of an artifact spirit that could easily run off by itself. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared from behind them. All the spaces in the headquarters gently trembled at that moment, giving off tremendous pressures. All the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult had been activated at that moment. Countless formations interlinked with one another, forming an extremely tremendous killing formation in the end. The killing formation surrounded the entire castle. The 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult have returned. They've activated all the formations. Fairy Hao Yu stared backwards and said with composure. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shen Jian were unable to remain as cool as Fairy Hao Yu. Their hearts all sank, and their faces became extremely stern. "There's no time. Let me try to see whether I can get through the setup here," Houston said firmly. He ignored everyone's attempts at persuading him. With determination, he entered the formation without looking back. Aside from the fact that he wanted to ruin the Empyrean demon cult's plans of creating the blood and soul beads, there was another factor to his actions, and that was the artifact spirit. Houston understood that there was something extremely important to the artifact spirit here through communicating with the artifact spirit. At the same time, there was a huge fortune for himself. With the Empyrean demon orb over his head, Houston used the Empyrean demon arts. Demonic aura wrapped around him, and he had already entered the terrifying killing formation that protected the pool of blood. As soon as he set foot in the killing formation, terrifying killing intent permeated the surroundings. Just the killing intent had almost torn Houston into shreds. If it were not for his Empyrean demon arts and the Empyrean demon orb above his head, he would probably fail to even endure the killing intent. Jian Chen, Shen Jian, and Sacred Feather all stood outside the formation as they stared at Houston nervously. However, they could not help but let out a sigh of relief when they saw how the killing formation did not attack Houston as he advanced through it with great difficulty. At the same time, the 3 of them felt extremely doubtful. Why was such a powerful killing formation rendered useless before Houston? Fairy Hao Yu stared at the Empyrean demon orb above Houston's head without blinking at all. Surprise filled her face. She understood just how terrifying the killing formation was more than anyone. It was enough to kill chaotic primes, yet Houston, who was just an overgod, was actually able to move through it as he wished by relying on a god artifact. This shocked her greatly. The Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, the Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, Fairy Hao Yu murmured as the light in her eyes flickered. As Houston advanced through the killing formation with great difficulty, he was like a dead leaf in the wind, swaying from side to side. Even though the killing formation did not activate, the invisible killing intent that filled it was still difficult for him to endure. He basically needed to use all the strength that his body could provide to take each step. As a result, he advanced at an extremely slow rate. At this moment, 3 figures shrouded in demonic auras gathered together within the headquarters. We've searched through the entire headquarters, but we've failed to find any intruders. At the same time, we activated the formation as soon as possible, so it's impossible for them to escape here without us sensing it. Where are they hiding? One of them growled. If Jianchen was present, he would directly recognize this voice as Huai'an's. Then maybe the intruders have gone to the Forbidden Grounds, said Yi Huayue, who was wrapped up in a demonic aura. Her voice was slightly weak. After she finished speaking, there was a fit of coughing. Clearly, she was injured. The Forbidden Grounds? Impossible. Huai'an and the other vice leader cried out after they heard Yi Huayue's words. The demonic aura around them began to churn violently as well. If their faces were visible, it would be quite evident that as soon as they thought that the intruders might have entered the Forbidden Grounds, their faces had paled. Soon, the 3 of them moved, flying as quickly as they could towards the Forbidden Grounds. Even though they did not believe the intruders would be able to find the hidden Forbidden Grounds, even though they knew the Great Elder had personally cast down supreme formations there, they still did not dare to be careless. They would rather believe it than dismiss it. This was because they deeply understood just how important the Forbidden Grounds were. Once anything happened to the Forbidden Grounds, the Great Elder would never spare them. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather were all relieved as they stood by the pool of blood. Houston had already passed through the killing formation successfully, arriving above the pool of blood safely despite the fright. Afterwards, he directly dove into the sea of blood below under the protection of the Empyrean demon orb, disappearing from the vision of Jianchen and the others. On the other hand, Fairy Haoyu raised an eyebrow. She looked behind and said, "The 3 vice leaders are currently hurrying over. Stay here and don't come out. I'll go stop the 3 of them. Remember, if you don't want trouble, you can't reveal yourselves before them." With that, Fairy Haoyu van at the same time, primordial realm laws permeated the side of the pool, completely erasing their presences. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather hid their presences with their full strengths as well. They did their best to hide themselves as they stared at the sea of blood nervously and anxiously. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. There were 9, thumb-sized, red blood beads in his hands. Each bead was translucent and extremely bright, shining with dazzling red light. It seemed like pieces of red quartz. However, each bead pulsed with extremely powerful energy that was enough to surprise over gods and even make the expressions of God Kings change. The energy within the 9 beads was just too powerful. If it erupted at that moment, it would be enough to unleash devastating might, easily killing over gods. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather all noticed the 9 blood beads in Houston's hands. They all became very stern. These 9 beads should be the blood beads condensed from the essence of blood that Fairy Haoyu mentioned. The Empyrean demon cult has put in so much effort into condensing these blood beads, but they've all been taken away by Uncle Xiu, so they'll definitely be a great disturbance from the Empyrean demon cult. Jianchen's heart was rather heavy. He could tell just how important this place was to the Empyrean demon cult from the formations here. Or in other words, he could tell just how important this place was to the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. If the Great Elder personally came to the Cloud Plane, he would not be able to imagine the outcome. After taking the 9 blood beads, Houston was just about to leave. Suddenly, he froze slightly and looked at the sky. He looked at the tremendous swirl formed by the chilling winds. After hesitating slightly, he slowly flew up into the sky while the red light from the Empyrean demon orb protected him. Very soon, he disappeared into the tremendous swirl. When he appeared again, Another 9 beads of similar sizes had appeared in his hands. They were dark beads. Inside the dark beads was an extremely powerful and pure energy of souls. Now, all 9 soul beads and blood beads had ended up in Houston's hands. At this moment, there was a flash. Fairy Hao Yu had returned to their side. When she saw the 18 beads in Houston's hands, her eyes narrowed as well. She said grimly, "The true upper echelons of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be alerted now that they've lost the blood and soul beads. It might even alarm the Great Elder directly. We can't stay here for long. We must leave as soon as possible. The Empyrean demon cult will probably do something big afterwards." Houston also understood the severity of the matter. After taking away the 9 blood beads and soul beads, he directly flew out, passing through the formation just like before, where it was frightening but not dangerous. However, passing through the formation was extremely difficult for Houston. When he emerged, the terrifying killing intent in there had almost made him collapse. His face was ashen. Fairy Hao Yu was stern. With a flip of her hand, the bright moon divine hall appeared, and she said, "Enter the divine hall quickly. We need to leave as soon as possible." The 4 of them did not hesitate at all and immediately entered the bright moon divine hall. Fairy Hao Yu stowed the divine hall away and used the laws of the primordial realm to erase the presences and traces they left behind. Then she disappeared with a flash, making her way out of the castle with lightning speed. All the formations in the castle had been activated by now. Countless formations stacked upon one another, interlocking together into one, causing the security of the entire castle to become virtually impenetrable. Fairy Hao Yu's face was cold as her eyes shone with a sharp light. A terrifying presence enough to frighten the world emanated from her. A layer of moonlight covered here as she directly collided against the formation with the power of laws from the primordial realm. Boom! The entire castle trembled from that. Even though the killing formation in her way had combined with all the formations, it still cracked before Fairy Hao Yu's powerful strike, directly collapsing. Fairy Hao Yu did not slow down at all. She continued to give off a soaring presence, ramming her way through layers upon layers of formations that blocked her way like she was unstoppable. She retreated from the castle quickly. Even though the castle's defenses had made it virtually impregnable from both the inside and the outside, there were no killing formations that could stop Fairy Hao Yu in the entire castle apart from the ones that protected the pool of blood. Even when all these formations interlinked with one another, resulting in a drastic increase in strength, it was still unable to stop Fairy Hao Yu. At that moment, the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult that all the infinite primes on the cloud plane feared and did not dare to approach was like the back garden of her own house to Fairy Hao Yu. It was unable to stop her at all. Boom! At this moment, a heavy sound suddenly rang out through the entire castle. Fairy Hao Yu formed a seal with her hands, using a technique to smash through the many layers of formations with her full strength, creating a hole in the castle. Afterwards, she emerged from there and completely vanished. At the same time, shackles condensed from moonlight force trapped the 3 vice leaders in there. Their bodies were bound, completely immobilizing them. At this moment, the demonic aura around the 3 of them pulsed violently. They roared out at the same time, and under their full strength, they finally reduced the shackles around them to pieces. Then, they vanished from there silently. When they appeared once again, they had arrived before the hole that Fairy Hao Yu had created. The 3 of them stared at the hole, and their faces became extremely sunken. This castle is a god artifact with extremely great defenses. Only chaotic primes can smash through this. Once we activate all the formations in our headquarters, even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes can't escape, yet we were unable to stop this person at all. Which chaotic prime is this person? Let's go to the Forbidden Grounds quickly. The chaotic prime who intruded on our headquarters stayed there for quite a long time. With that, the 3 of them vanished at that moment. When they appeared again, they had arrived beside the blood pool. They stood outside the formations. Fortunately, the formation is fine. The Great Elder cast down this formation after all. Even if that person possesses the strength of a chaotic prime, it's still impossible for them to smash through it. The three of them all let out a sigh of relief when they saw that the formation was completely fine. They could ignore the fact that a chaotic prime had infiltrated their headquarters and killed so many god kings. They could even ignore the fact that there was a huge hole in the castle now. This was because all they needed to do was report the matter, and the higher-ups would send someone to deal with this chaotic prime. The only thing they could not allow was for anything to happen to the blood beads and soul beads in the Forbidden Grounds. However, when Huayan subconsciously glanced at the depths of the blood pool, his face suddenly froze. It began to pale instantly as he felt intense disbelief. He cried out, "Why are the blood pearls gone?" The two other vice leaders were greatly surprised as well. They all glanced at the pool of blood. With that, blood instantly drained from their faces. They had almost been frightened to death. "Oh no, these soul beads are gone as well," Huayue said with a trembling voice. At that moment, the three vice leaders all felt rather lightheaded. They had almost lost their footing and tripped. Fear filled their hearts. How? The blood beads and soul beads are all gone. How do we explain this to the higher-ups? Quick, report to the Grand Elder. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plain, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plain, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. The divine hall seemed to be able to rule over an entire region. Even the independent, unknown space seemed to bow down before it, kneeling at the divine hall's feet. At this moment, two balls of light suddenly appeared in a silent, dark secret room at the top of the divine hall. They tore through the darkness like two bolts of lightning, giving the dark room some light. The Empyrean Demon Orb. This is the presence of the Empyrean Demon Orb. Ningxuang, have you come to the Saint's world? A trembling, excited voice suddenly rang out in the pitch-black room. It was filled with reminiscence. The two balls of light that had suddenly appeared were actually a pair of eyes that shone brightly. It was even possible to vaguely make out a figure seated in the secret room from the two balls of light. A large body sat there, giving off a terrifying presence that seemed to be enough to make the sky collapse. How many years, just how many years has it been? I've finally waited till this day. I've already prepared everything in the Saint's world. Ningxuang, we can meet again very soon. The voice filled with reminiscence rang out once again. After 1,000,000 years of preparation, 1,000,000 years of arduous effort, and 1,000,000 years of bitter waiting and eagerness, it was finally happening. Even though the owner of the voice had already forged a heart that would not tremble even if the universe was destroyed, it shook uncontrollably at this moment. He had waited far too long for this day. Master, this one has important matters to report. At this moment, an elderly voice suddenly rang out from outside the secret room. It was filled with respect. Silently, a black-robed old man had appeared outside the secret room. The old man's eyes were deep as if the boundless outer space was hidden in there. As a matter of fact, there seemed to be endless laws interweaving with one another in his eyes as if the ways of the world were resonating. It was like a tremendous universe was evolving in there. Moreover, the presence that the old man gave off from time to time was enough to shock the world. The old man was extremely powerful. However, he stood outside the secret room politely with his head lowered. Respect had filled his face. Is it about the branch on the cloud plain? The voice in the secret room rang out. Exactly that. Master, this one has just received the news that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the branch on the cloud plain has used countless years to condense have been taken away by an unknown chaotic prime, the old man said politely. I know this already. You can go. The mission of the branch on the cloud plain has been completed, said the person in the secret room. The old man was slightly surprised when he heard that. Afterwards, he bowed politely and said, This one understands. This one bids you farewell. With that, the old man vanished silently. In the secret room, the person with the glowing eyes began to murmur once again. Since the Empyrean Demon Orb has appeared in the Saint's world, They must have come up as well. Sigh, it's just a pity that my original body is still trapped. This clone cannot advance to the cloud plane. The old man directly made his way to a hall after he departed. 7 people had already been waiting there for him. These 7 people also possessed powerful presences. They were all experts of the primordial realm. Greetings, Grand Elder. The 7 people all bowed when they saw the old man. Respect filled their faces. Soon afterwards, one of them said, Grand Elder, according to the images and sketches from the 3 vice leaders from the branch on the cloud plane, we've basically found out who the intruder is. She should be Hao Yu, the person who was ranked 3rd on the God King's throne several 100,000 years ago. Hao Yu is extremely powerful. It's said that when she was a God King, she killed an infinite prime. Her current strength is even greater now. Even if us 7 elders fight her together, we probably would not be able to defeat her, said a beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed natural charm, where her actions could invoke an irresistible sense of desire. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared. As if it could squash the sky, it enveloped the entire hall with a terrifying might. Aside from the Grand Elder, the expressions of the 7 other powerful primordial realm experts changed with the appearance of the pressure. The 7 of them felt like they were suffocating from the pressure. They even felt like the surrounding space was pressing down on them. Grand Elder, do you need me to set out and capture the intruder of the branch on the cloud plane? A deep voice rang through the hall. It was cold and merciless, icy and terrifying. The Grand Elder stood there indifferently, where it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. No need. The mission of the branch on the cloud plane has already been completed. We don't need to interfere with the matters there too much, just in case it foils Master's grand plan. The 7 elders looked at one another before accepting the orders. The terrifying pressure that engulfed the entire hall vanished with what the Grand Elder had said. Princess Tian sat in her own residence within the imperial palace of the Shi Empire in the northern region of the Cloud Plain. In her hands, there was an embroidered box that she played around with. She was very much curious about it. Just what is Jianchen giving to my aunt and uncle? He acted so mysteriously about it, and he even said that my aunt and uncle might like it, Princess Tian murmured softly. However, she did not open the box. She said with some annoyance, it's a pity that it has been so many days, and aunt and uncle have yet to return. I wonder when I can give this box to aunt. And aunt has been in a rather bad mood recently. Jianchen is a supreme overgod, so aunt and uncle should accept a gift from him, right? Princess Tian felt rather uneasy inside. Looking at the box, she did not feel confident about giving it to them. Your Highness, the Emperor and Empress have returned. At this moment, a female servant's voice rang out from outside. With that, Princess Tian's eyes lit up. She put the box away in her space ring and immediately ran out. In the Shi Empire, it was an extremely difficult matter for many of the princes and princesses to see the Emperor and the Empress. There were even some princes and princesses who would never even hold a conversation with the Emperor or the Empress. However, Princess Tian was an exception. Her status in the Shi Empire was extremely special. She could visit the Emperor and Empress whenever she wished. Siener greets aunt. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely without appearing stiff for rules at all. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely without appearing stiff for rules at all. Before her stood a graceful, dignified woman behind a screen. The screen obscured her appearance, only revealing a blurry figure. She was the Empress of the Shi Empire. Oh, it's Sienna. I've just returned, and you've come to see me. You sure receive news fast, the Empress said from behind the screen. Her voice was kind and filled with warmth. A lot of things have happened in the Empire during this time. I was afraid that Aunt's mood would be affected, so I especially came to spend some time, said Princess Tian. She seemed considerate, and at the same time, there was a sense of concern in her voice. Sigh, The empress sighed gently as if there was something indescribable and sorrowful affecting her mood. She seemed rather dispirited at that moment and said, "Sienna, come. Let's talk." "Yes, Aunt." Princess Tian slowly made her way over and went around the screen, sitting beside the empress liberally. "All right, Aunt, in the days that you were gone, an extremely surprising supreme overgod appeared in our northern region," said Princess Tian. The light in her eyes flickered as she paid close attention to the empress' face. Seeing how the empress did not react too violently, she continued, "Although this supreme overgod isn't a member of our northern region, he really is powerful. I think there's probably no one in the entire northern region that can rival this supreme overgod because he can defeat a god king as an overgod. I also heard that the god king was no ordinary god king, but the disciple of a large sect from the Xiandao Empire. What is even more surprising is after the overgod defeated the god king, he was not injured at all. Aunt, don't you think this overgod is powerful?" The empress' expression remained the same. She nodded slightly. "To fight a god king as an overgod and achieve victory. That's right, he is indeed a supreme overgod with surprising potential. This strength might even be enough to rival the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque." "Even Aunt thinks so. Hee. I also think that this supreme overgod has the right to challenge the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque." Princess Tian smiled sweetly. Soon afterwards, she seemed to think of something, and she suddenly took out an embroidered box from her space ring. She said, "All right, Aunt, when I visited this supreme overgod last time, he said to give this box to Aunt or Uncle." Reaching this point, the princess paused. She stared at the box in her hand and said in thought, "Inside must be a gift from the supreme overgod for Aunt and Uncle." The empress frowned when she heard that. She said, "Sienna, how can you accept anyone's gift for me? It's not like you don't understand this. You better return this box to that person." The empress left no room for argument with how dignified her voice was. The princess became slightly troubled. When she thought about how stern Jianchen was when he gave the box to her, she understood that the item inside would definitely be special. However, she understood the temperament of the empress extremely well. Since the empress was unwilling to take the gift, anything she tried would be a futile effort. "Yes, Aunt. I understand." The princess became rather dejected. She stowed the box away unhappily and left the empress' residence before long. However, the princess did not forget what Jianchen had told her before. She only needed to give it to the empress or the Shi emperor. Since the empress did not want it, she went to find the Shi emperor. With Princess Tian's status, seeing the Shi emperor was naturally no problem. Very soon, she arrived in the Shi emperor's study room. When Princess Tian met the supreme emperor of the Shi Empire, the famed ruler who had basically caused an upheaval through the entire empire when he ascended to the throne, was sitting back in a precious chair sculpted from crystal that had depictions of dragons. He propped up his forehead with one hand as he rested. However, there was heavy exhaustion on his dignified and resolute face. "It's Sienna. Sienna, is there anything you need me for?" the Shi emperor said. His voice was filled with warmth. He did not move his posture in the chair at all. He did not even open his eyes. At that moment, the Shi emperor no longer possessed his usual coldness or his usual awe. He only seemed like a lonely and injured soul. "Uncle," Princess Tian hesitated when she saw how exhausted the Shi emperor was. She originally wanted to give Jianchen's box to him, but she found it rather difficult to bring herself to do something like that after seeing how exhausted he was. Uncle's lost daughter has always weighed on his heart during these years. He is mentally and psychologically torn. Now that he has finally gotten some time to rest, am I really going to disturb him? The princess thought. In the end, she sighed inside and did not choose to take out the box at this time. Fairy Hao Yu had returned to the Tianyuan clan in the Dong'an province with Jianchen and everyone else. They had originally departed soundlessly, without raising any attention, so they did the same when they returned. There'll probably be a lot of movements from the Empyrean demon cult soon since they lost the 9 blood beads and soul beads. You have to be careful. You mustn't reveal any traces at all, or no one will be able to save you. Fairy Hao Yu personally cast down a barrier in a secret room deep underground and warned them sternly. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb suddenly drifted out of Houston's sea of consciousness. It shone with dazzling red light. In the next moment, 10 thumb-sized beads drifted out. The 10 beads were 5 soul beads and 5 blood beads. They drifted towards Jianqin, Houston, Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Fairy Haoyu. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that it's gifting these blood beads and soul beads to everyone to thank you all for your help. Houston passed on the artifact spirit's message. Although these blood beads and soul beads were condensed from the blood and energy of souls from countless lives, the beads have already become the purest crystal after the formations refined them for so many years. As a result, absorbing the energy from them won't leave any side effects behind. Fairy Haoyu stared at the blood beads and soul beads and studied them seriously. She nodded, "That's right. The beads have already been refined for so many years that all factors of evil and unstable elements have been eliminated. The beads have become great nourishment, which can increase your strength by quite a lot." Fairy Haoyu glanced at Jianqin when she said that. Afterwards, she swung her arm and sent the beads that had drifted before her to Jianqin. She said, "These beads are useless to me. You take them." Jianqin looked at the beads. He hesitated. Although the blood and soul beads were extremely nourishing, enough for the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, they were still condensed from the essence of blood and energy of souls from countless people. To him, only demonic cultivators would use objects like this to cultivate. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jianqin, they did not accept the beads. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jianqin, they did not accept the beads. A while later, Shenzhen said, "Although I'm not a part of any righteous way, I don't belong to any demonic path either. The Empyrean demon cult has slaughtered countless individuals, using their lives to condense these beads. Even if they can greatly increase the cultivation of a person, I would be no different from a person who walks the demonic path if I use them." With that, the 2 beads before Shenzhen returned to Houston. He said sternly, "Houston, these things don't suit me. However, you practice a demonic cultivation method, so there should be nothing wrong with you using it. As a result, I'll gift these beads to you." Shenzhen had spoken these words firmly. Even though the beads could greatly increase his cultivation, they did not entice Shenzhen at all. Shenzhen is right. These beads are indeed unsuitable for us. After all, we do not walk a demonic path of cultivation while our cultivation methods aren't from a demonic path either. If we use something that was condensed from the blood and souls of countless lives to cultivate, it'll affect our mental state. If it's severe, it might even lead to inner demons, which will affect our future cultivation. Jianqin also gifted his beads to Houston. Even though formations had refined the beads, removing all the evil and unstable impurities from them, their origins were still a little too vicious. Jianqin had his moralis. If the beads came from magical beasts or other vicious beasts, he would naturally have no problem with them. After all, he had already accepted such an idea. However, the beads did not come from magical beasts, so he was unable to accept it. "I don't need it either. Uncle Xiu, it's best if you take them for yourself," said Sacred Feather as well, giving his beads to Houston. Houston looked at the 4 soul beads and blood beads that hovered before him. After hesitating slightly, he said, "All right then. Since you all don't need it, I won't hold back. I'll accept them for the Empyrean demon orb for now. These items are very useful to the Empyrean demon orb." Why would a god artifact need these items? Fairy Haoyu stared at Houston and asked steadily. Houston shook his head. "Actually, I find this very strange as well. The Empyrean demon orb has simply surprised me too much in our trip to the headquarters." Fairy Haoyu stared at Houston deeply and said, "Your Empyrean demon orb is probably not as simple as it seems. I tell you to use it as little as possible, and if you can, abandon it, just in case it dooms you." Houston immediately became solemn. He knew that as a terrifyingly powerful primordial realm expert, Fairy Haoyu definitely would not give groundless advice. Afterwards, Fairy Hao Yu looked at Jianchen again. She said, "I'm going to leave. What happened in the Empyrean demon cult will definitely alarm the upper echelons. If I stay, it'll only lead to more trouble for you. You have to be careful in the future." With that, Fairy Hao Yu hesitated slightly. Afterwards, she said to Jianchen secretly, "I suspect that the Empyrean demon orb is somehow connected to the Empyrean demon cult, but I don't know whether it's good or bad." Jianchen nodded slightly to show that he understood. In reality, he also had suspected that. After all, the formations that guarded the blood beads and soul beads were so powerful that even chaotic primes would probably be doomed if they entered, yet the Empyrean demon orb was able to move through such terrifying formations freely. It simply did not make sense. If the Empyrean demon orb was a god artifact that specialized in suppressing formations, it would be explainable at the very least. However, Jianchen had learnt from the sword spirits that the Empyrean demon orb was the famed treasure of the strongest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. It could both attack and defend, but there were no rumors of it being able to suppress formations. As a result, this could only be explained as the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult had been set up in a special manner, where they would be useless against the Empyrean demon orb. However, the part that Jianchen did not understand was that one came from the demon's world, while the other was in the saint's world. Why would they be connected? Jianchen did not think too much of the name, as who knows how many people who shared the same names and surnames existed in the world. It just happened too frequently. After a simple farewell, Fairy Hao Yu vanished silently from the secret room. In the secret room, Jianchen had stated his doubts over why the Empyrean demon orb could move through the formation so easily. Unfortunately, Houston also had no idea because he had only been following the orders of the artifact spirit in the Empyrean demon orb. However, when Houston asked the artifact spirit, it told him that it had seen the formations before, so it knew the method to go through them. Clearly, everyone did not believe this answer, as Houston and the artifact spirit had never undergone any procedure to get through the formation. Instead, they had directly swaggered in, passing through in a straight line. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb is hiding secrets from us, thought Jianchen. Then he took our space ring and passed it to Houston. He said sternly, "Uncle Xiu, it's no longer safe for you to stay here with the soul beads and blood beads. There are some divine crystals in there. You have to go to the Heavenly Moon Empire as soon as possible and then go to the Blood Sun Empire through a teleportation formation there. Then, you need to use a regional teleportation formation to go to the Central Region. The Central Region is much more powerful than the 4 other regions. You should be much safer there, so use this opportunity to increase your strength." Houston also understood the severity of the matter. He did not turn down Jianchen's offer. He immediately left the Tian Yuan clan after bidding farewell to everyone. He had obtained the blood and soul beads, so the matter that took priority was naturally increasing his own strength as soon as possible. Now that the Empyrean demon cult had lost such treasures, it would be extremely likely that they would send even more terrifying experts here. The senses of the souls from primordial realm experts were so terrifying that no matter how well he hid in the southern region, he would not be able to escape a primordial realm expert's search. Once the beads were exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Houston left through the teleportation formation in the forbidden grounds of the clan. In order to avoid any suspicion, Jianchen, Shenjian, and Sacred Feather immediately charged for the front lines. Now, the ceasefire period was just about to end. A huge army had gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom once again, standing on the reconstructed walls in the face of the enemy. The soldiers of the 3 armies gathered several dozen kilometers away from the fortress. Where they gathered, demonic aura formed thick, black clouds, causing the world there to descend into darkness. On the castle walls, many god kings gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. However, their attitudes towards Jianchen had changed drastically when they saw him this time. They all greeted him with smiles. Jianchen looked at them and discovered some unfamiliar faces. After a simple introduction, he learnt that they were reinforcements from the empires in the southern region. However, their enthusiasm left Jianchen rather troubled. Even if they knew there was a primordial realm expert behind him, there was no need for them to behave like this. Jianchen, I never thought you would defeat a god king in the northern region. That really was shocking. The divine king made his way over and smiled at Jianchen. Only with that did Jianchen understand. His victory over a god king in the northern region had already spread to here. Look, the Empyrean demon cult seems to be retreating, a god king said in surprise from the castle walls. Everyone immediately redirected their attention away from Jianchen, staring up ahead at the camp of the three armies. With their eyes, they were naturally able to see what was happening several dozen kilometers away clearly in such an open area. Jianchen also clearly saw the three armies camped there. They were actually retreating at this moment, gradually disappearing from everyone's view. Chapter 1963, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect, 1. The Empyrean demon cult's sudden retreat had greatly confused the god kings who stood on the wall. After half a month of preparation, they were all ready for battle. They had made up their minds to fight a prolonged battle against the Empyrean demon cult. However, just when the agreed ceasefire was about to end, and they were about to continue their war, the Empyrean demon cult that had the upper hand was suddenly retreating. This surprising move had bewildered the god kings on the walls. They had no idea why this was happening. Even the divine king revealed doubt and confusion as he stared at the armies that had already retreated into the distance. They've retreated? The Empyrean demon cult is just going to retreat like this? Surely there isn't some scheme involved, right? A god king said from the walls as he watched everything unfold with quite some disbelief. I know how the Empyrean demon cult acts extremely well. With the support of the Great Elder, the Empyrean demon cult can rampage as they wish on the cloud plane. They can destroy whatever they want. It's exactly because of the Great Elder behind them that the powerful organizations on the cloud plane dare not to lay their hands on the Empyrean demon cult. As a result, the Empyrean demon cult has created several storms of blood in the past several tens of thousand years, committing atrocities of massacres. In particular, the invasion this time could be regarded as unprecedented. Not only were all 9 armies mobilized, but they even attacked 3 regions at the same time, and even their vice leaders set out. This is extremely rare. They would never retreat so easily unless their goals were fulfilled, said a sagely old man with a duster. That's right. The retreat of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be more complicated than it seems. We can't become careless, said another god king. The god kings on the walls all stated their thoughts and guesses. However, none of them believed the Empyrean demon cult was truly retreating. Even the divine king thought of it like that. This was because the Empyrean demon cult was used to using force. Coupled with the size of their army this time, it was impossible for them to retreat willingly unless they caused a massacre enough to shock the entire cloud plane based on how they acted in the past. Among them, only Jianchen, Shenjian, and Sacred Feather knew that the retreat of the Empyrean demon cult was not for some ulterior motives or schemes. They were really retreating. However, Jianchen also had no idea how long the 9 armies would remain inactive. He understood the secret behind why the Empyrean demon cult had been declaring wars everywhere from his trip to the headquarters. Now that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the Empyrean demon cult had spent who knows how long on had been stolen, there were only 2 possible actions they could take next. First, they could give up on the wars and devote themselves to finding the blood and soul beads. Secondly, they could continue waging wars and condense the beads again. I hope Uncle Xiao can reach the central region safely. It's just a pity that I don't have enough 5-colored divine crystals on me. Otherwise, I would have gotten Uncle Xiao to directly leave the cloud plane and go somewhere else. It would be even safer with that, thought Jianchen. He could only pray for Uncle Xiao right now, as he was unable to offer any other support. Just as everyone was discussing the withdrawal of the Empyrean demon cult, they received a shocking piece of news. The Empyrean demon cult had sent groups of people to the surrounding divine kingdoms to engage in wanton massacres, leading to an endless slaughter once again. It filled many cities and provincial cities with blood, and no one was spared wherever they passed by. Even a few royal capitals of divine kingdoms had suffered this fate, With all the people there completely massacred by the Empyrean demon cult. The god kings who guarded the divine kingdoms were slain by several protectors from the Empyrean demon cult as well. In the end, 3 divine kingdoms that neighbored the divine kingdom of Pingtian were destroyed. The other divine kingdoms suffered losses of varying degrees as well. The god kings who stood on the walls fumed when they received the news. The divine king sighed gently. There was some helplessness on his face. He said nothing. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He analyzed to himself, in terms of time, the Empyrean demon cult moved exactly when Fairy Hao Yu infiltrated the headquarters. Clearly, they wanted to gather some more blood and energy of souls so that they could increase the quality of the blood and soul beads. It shouldn't be for recondensing the blood and soul beads. Afterwards, the coalition army on the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side remained on high vigilance. They did not leave the fortress at all. Half a month later, when a god king risked his life by approaching 10,000 kilometers from the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, did they receive accurate information. Only then did they truly believe the Empyrean demon cult had withdrawn. The divine king and the reinforcing god kings were all relieved when they received the reliable information. The divine king immediately clasped his fist at everyone. He said amicably but no less dignified, "Everyone, looks like the war this time has truly ended. I am grateful for all your assistance and reinforcement." "You are too polite, Your Majesty. The Empyrean demon cult is vicious. Against such a horrible cult, we should unite together against them." An old man clasped his fist at the divine king and said extremely politely. He was an elder of the Earth Spirit sect. Of course, he was not one of the 3 elders who had come to the divine kingdom initially. Instead, he belonged to the second wave of reinforcements. Then, the elder looked at Jian Chen, and he said apologetically, "Brother Jian Chen, I hope you don't take offense from what those disappointing disciples of our Earth Spirit sect did to you." The old man sighed gently after reaching this point. "It's just a pity that many of our disciples have fallen on the battlefield, or our Earth Spirit sect will definitely punish them severely so that we can provide an explanation to Brother Jian Chen." All the god kings who stood on the walls looked at Jian Chen and the elder from the Earth Spirit sect. They had heard about Jian Chen's grievance with the Earth Spirit sect. If Jian Chen was a supreme overgod who could barely manage to make it onto the overgod's plaque, there would be no need for the Earth Spirit sect to worry too much even if they had to take him seriously with their strength. However, he was a supreme overgod with shocking strength, someone who could challenge the person who ranked first on the overgod's plaque. That changed the situation completely because an overgod like that could fend off god kings, and if they broke through to god king, they would be able to make it onto the god king's throne. It was rumored that those who ranked within the top 10 on the God King's throne possessed extremely shocking strength that was enough to fend off early infinite primes. As a matter of fact, they could even accomplish the shocking feat of killing regular infinite primes as God Kings. Moreover, it was revealed that a primordial realm expert was supporting Jian Chen through the matters with Yaxi Lian. The Earth Spirit sect was naturally reluctant to offend someone like that. Jian Chen remained indifferent under the attention of all the god kings from different organizations. He said, "This matter isn't really related to the dead disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. The true suspect is someone else. It's impossible for a few disciples to possess something as precious as a god king level talisman." The elder's face immediately froze from that. He sighed gently and said nothing else. After bidding farewell to the divine king, he left with the disciples of the Earth Spirit sect. He knew that the grievances between the Earth Spirit sect and Jian Chen could not be resolved in just a few words. He would let the sect master and so on deal with it instead. Now that the war against the Empyrean demon cult had ended, the god kings from the various organizations all retreated. They returned to where they came from. The divine king arrived before Jian Chen and said, "Jian Chen, let me go deal with some matters after the battle first. In 3 days I'll personally accompany you to the Earth Spirit sect." The people from the Earth Spirit sect haven't been looking at the bigger picture, attacking people on the same side as them during the war. I will definitely demand an explanation from them for this. Towards the end, the divine king's voice became rather solemn as a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Chapter 1964, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect. 2. Now that the war had ended, Jianqin, Shenzhen, and Sacred Feather returned to the provincial city with the people from the Dong'an province. Shenzhen did not stick around for long. On the same day they returned, he bid farewell to Jianqin and everyone else before setting off all by himself to find what was calling him in the distance. As for Xiongzhong, Qing Jingyun, and the others who came from the world of Forsaken Saints, they remained with the Tianyuan clan. They were still too weak right now. If they went with their spirit king, not only would they fail to provide any support, but they would even weigh him down instead. After all, Shenzhen was leaving the cloud plane and entering outer space, venturing to a place beyond the cloud plane. He would face dangers everywhere. As for Jianqin, he was conditioning himself in the Tianyuan clan, quietly waiting for his visit to the Earth Spirit Sect to come in 3 days. At the same time, the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult who served the branch on the cloud plane gathered in a gloomy secret room within the headquarters. A thick demonic aura surrounded them as they gave off tremendous, terrifying presences, causing the air in the room to seemingly solidify. What are the higher-ups trying to do? The blood and soul beads that our branch spent so much time condensing have been stolen under the protection of the formations the Great Elder personally cast down, yet the Grand Elder has given no response at all. Not only has he not sent a chaotic prime to capture the person who stole the beads, but he hasn't even given orders to search for the beads. It's as if he doesn't care about the loss at all. Hasn't all our hard work over these years gone to waste? Huayan said. His face was obscured, but his voice was filled with doubt and confusion. Huayan, there are just some things that we can't do anything about. It's best if you stop criticizing the higher-ups. If the Grand Elder hears of it, he'll be displeased, Yi Huayue said indifferently. Then she looked at the 3rd vice leader and said, Elder Sen, an unknown infinite prime captured Yashi Lian recently. Through the description from Yashi Lian, do you think the primordial realm expert who stole the blood and soul beads from our headquarters is the same person who captured Yashi Lian? The vice leader known as Elder Sen fell silent for a while. Only then did he say, the primordial realm expert who captured Yashi Lian uses moonlight combined with laws, while the person who intruded on our headquarters also used that. In my opinion, she's the same person. Since it's the same person, it's much easier to handle. According to my knowledge, the primordial realm expert seems to be related to a person called Jianqin from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Yi Huayue said with ulterior motives. Jianqin? It's Jianqin again. Huayan's cold voice rang out. As soon as Jianqin was mentioned, unconcealable killing intent rose up from his heart. He said, not only did Jianqin stand up against us publicly, protecting the clan of Duanmu's successor, but it was also because of him that I had to agree to half a month of ceasefire. I even suspect that the blood and soul beads were robbed this time because of Jianqin. He cannot be left alive. Huayan continued, the blood beads and soul beads were condensed after much difficulty, taking tremendous effort and time. We have to retrieve them, or we won't be able to give the Great Elder an explanation at all. Since Jianqin is connected to all this, I'll start with him. There was cold killing intent in Huayan's voice. The higher-ups aren't actually looking into the loss of the blood and soul beads. There's something strange about it. There's probably something hidden that we do not know about in there. Huayan, I think it's best if you don't act recklessly, Elderson warned out of kind intentions. The loss of the blood and soul beads had filled him and Yi Huayue with regret as well, as every single one of those 18 tiny beads was condensed from their efforts. Every single one of the beads had cost them great efforts. Even though they knew the Great Elder needed the beads and they would not obtain a single one once they were completely condensed, it still represented their contribution and hard work. However, Yi Huayue and he could both tell that there was probably another side to the story, making it not as simple as it seemed on the surface. As a result, the two of them did not dare to act recklessly. Formations the Great Elder personally cast down protected the blood and soul bead. Chaotic primes could smash through the castle, but they would not be able to destroy those formations at all. Yet, the beads had all been lost while the formations remained intact. They were unsure if this was the purposeful arrangements of the higher-ups, or in other words, there was a scheme they did not know hidden in there. The light in Huai An's eyes flickered. After a while of thought, he nodded slowly. I understand the weight of this matter. The Blood Sun Empire was located in the center of the southern region. It was the only eternal empire in the southern region, and 6 ancient empires surrounded it as well as countless divine kingdoms of various sizes. In the depths of a well-decorated hall within the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire, the heavy door to a secret room slowly opened with a heavy squeaks. A dignified middle-aged man in gold and violet robes stood there with his arms crossed before the secret room. When the door to the room was completely opened, the middle-aged man entered at a steady pace. Greetings, Ninth Prince. 3 middle-aged men were already standing politely within the secret room. They had been waiting for some time now. They all bowed at the middle-aged man who entered the secret room. The middle-aged man who had just entered the secret room was the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. Even though there were over a dozen princes in the Blood Sun Empire, there was only a handful of them who truly stood out and had the right to succeed as emperor. Not only was the 9th prince the one who stood out the most among them, but he was also the person that the current emperor valued the most. There were even rumors that once the emperor of the Blood Sun Empire abdicated, the next emperor would definitely be the 9th prince. As a result, basically no other prince could match up to the 9th prince's authority in the Blood Sun Empire. The 9th prince stood before the 3 of them indifferently and ordered firmly, "The 3 of you visit the Mountains of Seven's Despair near the Heavenly Moon Empire. Bring me the flower of ways I planted there." After so many years of preparation, the 9th prince had finally reached the peak of God King. He was only a single step away from the primordial realm. This step seemed short, but in reality, it was extremely distant and extremely difficult to take. Even with the 9th prince's surprising talent, he would still need a very long time to reach the primordial realm. The Flower of Ways was the only heavenly resource that could allow him to overcome his current cultivation bottleneck in the shortest amount of time possible so that he could reach the primordial realm. The faces of the 3 god kings changed when the prince mentioned the Flower of Ways. They looked at one another, and their faces were filled with bitterness. The 9th prince frowned. He asked grimly, "Something has happened to the Flower of Ways?" The 3 middle-aged god kings hesitated slightly. Finally, one of them gathered the courage to say, "9th prince, the Flower of Ways has been taken by a primordial realm expert." The 9th prince's eyes immediately emitted 2 shocking beams of light when he heard that. A tremendous presence radiated from his body like a flood. It was extremely terrifying. They were also god kings, but when the 3 middle-aged men faced the presence that had erupted from the 9th prince, they staggered backwards. They felt like a mountain had crushed down on them. "Let's go to the Mountains of Seven's Despair," the 9th prince said emotionlessly. The Earth Spirit sect was one of the 2 peak sects in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They possessed an extremely great status in the Heavenly Moon Empire, where even the imperial family had to show them respect. The Earth Spirit sect was established in the 3,000 spiritual mountains that possessed the densest origin energy in the Heavenly Moon Empire. They used the mountains as a source of energy to cast down a tremendous protective formation. The formation was so powerful that even regular primordial realm experts would struggle to shake it. This day just happened to be the centennial disciple acceptance ceremony of the Earth Spirit sect. The narrow path between the mountains that led to the sect was already completely packed. Many young people of similar ages stood in groups neatly, taking the various tests set up by the Earth Spirit sect in an orderly manner. They wanted to join the Earth Spirit sect and become one of their disciples so that they could bring glory to their family and ancestors. There were many people from large clans who possessed some status in the Heavenly Moon Empire among them. They either rode powerful, tamed birds or beasts, or luxurious carriages. As a result, the area outside the sect had already become filled with luxurious carriages as well as huge, powerful beasts. However, without any exceptions, no one dared to fly in the sky within 1,000 kilometers of the sect. They all traveled along the ground. At this moment, a golden streak of light suddenly appeared. It directly crossed through the sky at a high altitude, moving towards the Earth Spirit sect. They were still at the horizon, but in the next moment, they had crossed the distance and appeared outside the Earth Spirit sect. It did not land. Instead, it hovered in the sky at the same level as the highest mountain of the Earth Spirit sect. At a closer glance, the golden carriage was pulled by 9 exotic beasts. Each beast was very powerful, possessing the cultivation level of overgod. Who is the one in the carriage? He's behaving in such an imposing manner, still floating in the sky after arriving before the Earth Spirit sect. That altitude is the same as the highest peak of the Earth Spirit sect. What a bold person. Doesn't he know that these actions are no different to challenging the Earth Spirit sect? The only people bold enough to do something like this either don't know the rules of the Earth Spirit sect or are extremely impressive experts. However, even the Emperor of the Heavenly Moon Empire and elders of the Taoist sect of Calm Clouds would not dare to fly that high. That's the same height as the mountain occupied by the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. For a moment, everyone outside the sect stared at the golden carriage as they discussed among themselves. The elder who was responsible for the acceptance ceremony did not go up to stop the carriage when he saw it. Instead, his eyes narrowed, and he immediately grew stern. He had already recognized the carriage. The owner of the carriage did indeed possess the right to act that way now. At this moment, the formation around the Earth Spirit sect shook. It completely opened. This would only happen when the Earth Spirit sect had to receive people with great statuses. So it's the Pingtian Divine King. Our humble abode is honored to have the Divine King. Please come in. A peal of laughter rang out. The current sect master flew out with over a dozen elders from the sect. They were all enthusiastic. If it were before the Divine King had reached the primordial realm, the Earth Spirit sect would have never welcomed him with such a great crowd of people. However, ever since he had broken through, his status had changed greatly. There were no organizations within an ancient empire that would want to offend an expert like that for no good reason. Chapter 1965. Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect 3. What? The person in the carriage is actually the Divine King of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian? It's said that he has reached the primordial realm now and is currently an infinite prime. He's on the same level as the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect, so it's the Divine King of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. That's what I was saying. Just who else would be bold enough to not only fly in the territory of the Earth Spirit sect but also maintain an altitude equal to the highest peak? Oh my God, is there really a primordial realm expert inside that golden carriage in the sky? That's a figure of legends. Many people don't get to see a single one in their entire lives. Naturally, the countless young people who had come to join the Earth Spirit sect and the seniors who accompanied them heard the sect master's voice loud and clear. It immediately led to a noisy clamor. In the next moment, the countless gazes that laid on the golden carriage shone. They were filled with excitement, envy, respect, and admiration. The primordial realm was a legendary level of cultivation to many of them. With their status, they did not even possess the right to see an expert like that. The Divine King's carriage made its way through the entrance of the Earth Spirit sect slowly under the warm welcome personally led by the sect master with the elders. They disappeared from view. In the center of the mountain range was a huge peak. Someone with great strength had forcefully cleaved it into an open square. The Divine King's golden carriage slowly came to a stop there. As the carriage opened, the white-robed Jianqin and the dragon-robed Divine King emerged. The sect master was a scholarly, middle-aged man. Currently, he smiled from ear to ear, and just when he wanted to talk, the horizon became extraordinarily bright. It was as if a huge sun hung at the entrance of the sect, causing it to become 2 or 3 times brighter compared to elsewhere. Jianqin sensed something. He looked over and saw a ruddy old man shining brilliantly like a sun, making his way over through the air from afar. The light he gave off was so bright that it directly suppressed the sun's light, making it pale in comparison. Jianqin's eyes suddenly narrowed the moment he saw the old man. The old man was only shining and gave off no presence, so he seemed ordinary. However, Jianqin was able to tell with a single glance that the old man had surpassed God King and reached the primordial realm. The sect master and the many elders sensed the old man's arrival. Respect immediately filled all their faces, and they bowed at the old man. "Greetings, ancestor." The ancestor moved extremely quickly. In just a single step, he traversed the distance and appeared before Jianqin and the Divine King. He glanced past Jianqin indifferently before directly looking at the Divine King. However, his indifferent glance made Jianqin's heart beat heavily. At that moment, he felt like he was suffocating, and he had even lost control of his body for a split second. The primordial realm is indeed powerful. I really am like an ant before an expert like this, thought Jianqin. He had seen quite a few primordial realm experts before. Aside from the Divine King and Huai, he had seen many infinite primes in his trip to the northern region. He had even seen a chaotic prime that possessed even more terrifying strength. However, those primordial realm experts never released their presences purposefully, so Jianqin did not experience anything particularly memorable. However, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect had shown off the might of the primordial realm at first glance. Even though it was just a split second, Jianqin had truly felt how powerful the primordial realm was. Ping Tian, congratulations on reaching this cultivation level. I believe that before long, a seventh ancient empire will appear in our southern region. The ancestor clasped his fist at the Divine King before inviting him into the main hall. Everyone sat down within the main hall. The ancestor and the Divine King sat at similar levels. Sang 2, let's cut to the chase. You should know why I've come here today. The Divine King directly approached the main reason behind his visit as soon as he sat down. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect remained silent. Your Majesty, what happened on the battlefield was indeed our disciple's fault. Our Earth Spirit sect is willing to compensate Brother Jianqin for the injuries he suffered on the battlefield. Moreover, the protector who dealt the sneak attack to Brother Jianqin with the talisman has already been expelled from our Earth Spirit sect. From today onwards, she is no longer our disciple. May I ask if Brother Jianqin and Your Majesty is satisfied with this? The sect master said. The Divine King looked at Jianqin, clearly asking for his thoughts. Jianqin's lips curled into a cold smile. He said, how can something as precious as a God King level talisman end up in the hands of an overgod, especially an overgod who's not particularly powerful? As a result, the true suspect behind all this is not the protector. Instead, she was ordered to do so by your elders. The sect master became stern. He asked solemnly, Brother Jianqin, may I ask if you have any evidence that points to the elders of our Earth Spirit sect as the suspect? If you're drawing a conclusion from a single God King level talisman all by yourself, isn't that a little too rash? Rash? I don't feel that it's rash at all. Instead, I think Jianqin's words are reasonable, the Divine King said firmly. The sect master's face became unsettled. Once this matter involved people at the level of elders, it would be rather difficult to resolve. Their Earth Spirit sect could give up on a few overgod protectors, but God Kings were the pillars of support of the Earth Spirit sect. Losing even just one of them would affect the strength of the Earth Spirit sect. The elders seated in the hall all became stern. Bring me Muku, the ancestor said all of a sudden, but his face remained indifferent. Muku was an elder of the Earth Spirit sect as well as the master of the 7 protectors who had created a mess in the Dong'an province. The sect master's face immediately changed. After hesitating slightly, he still sent people to summon Elder Mu in the end. Very soon, Elder Mu entered the hall. He bowed at the ancestor and stood there with a sunken face. Jianqin, the suspect you speak of, who is the master of those protectors, is right here. Do you plan on doing it yourself, or do you want Ping Tian to do it for you? The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said indifferently. Ancestor, we still haven't completely investigated, the sect master said with some urgency. He was a God King elder, so he could not be handed over just like that. However, before he could finish speaking, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect had raised his hand to shut him up. He stared at Jianqin deeply. If that's the case, I'll take him back with me, said the Divine King. He handled the matter decisively and was about to take Muku. "If that's the case, I'll take him back with me," said the divine king. He handled the matter decisively and was about to take Muku. However, just when the divine king was about to make his move, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said suddenly, "Pingtian, don't you feel like you're lowering yourself too much by moving against a god king as a primordial realm expert?" The divine king frowned at that. He said indifferently, "Sang Tu, what are you trying to say? Do you want Jianqin to fight a god king as an overgod?" It's rumored that although Jianqin has not attempted the overgod's plaque, he already possesses the strength to challenge the person who ranks first. Moreover, he defeated a god king lately. As a result, having Jianqin fight Muku is relatively fair, the ancestor said indifferently. He looked at the divine king and continued, "Although Muku is a god king, he's only an early god king and not a supreme god king either. As a result, if you take action, Pingtian, you'll be lowering yourself." Muku. The ancestor looked at Muku. His face was dignified to the point where he could not be denied. "Ancestor." Elder Mu bowed politely. "Muku, on the battlefield between the divine kingdom of Pingtian and the Empyrean demon cult, your disciple ignored the bigger picture and attacked a person on her side despite the circumstances. As their master, you haven't managed to restrain them properly, so you are responsible for your disciple's mistakes. You need to give Jianqin an explanation for this," the ancestor said. "Yes, ancestor," Muku said politely. He did not dare to disobey. "Jianqin, what I can offer you is a battle against Muku, regardless of any deaths that may happen. What do you think?" The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect said to Jianqin. Jianqin stood up. He looked at the ancestor with great interest. Not only did he show no fear, but his expression was also rather sharp. He said coldly, "If that's the case, allow me to witness just how powerful the God King elders of your Earth Spirit sect are." Jianqin glared at Elder Mu as powerful sword intent radiated from him. He said coldly, "Muku, come fight me." There was also a certain sharpness in Elder Mu's old eyes. He said, "I also want to witness the supreme prodigy who can challenge the first place on the Overgod's plaque. I want to see whether you really are as powerful as you are rumored to be, where you can defeat God Kings as an Overgod." With that, Elder Mu made his way outside. "Muku, only defeat is accepted in this battle." However, the ancestor's voice rang out in Muku's head at this moment. The secret message had come from an expert who had reached Infinite Prime many years ago, so even the Divine King was unable to hear it, let alone the other elders present. As a result, only Muku heard the message. Elder Mu immediately froze. His face rapidly changed a few times before returning to how it was before. He felt grief. There were many platforms of different sizes in the Earth Spirit sect. They were specially provided for spars between disciples. Currently, Jianqin and Elder Mu stood before each other on the largest one. A barrier the ancestor cast down had surrounded the entire platform. The barrier was so powerful that even God Kings would struggle to get through it. It would easily resist the shockwaves of battle that appeared inside. Basically, all the elders of the Earth Spirit sect had gathered around the platform. Even the elders in seclusion had emerged to witness the fight. If it were just a battle between God Kings, it would be impossible for so many elders to watch. However, a battle between a supreme overgod who was powerful enough to challenge the first place on the overgod's plaque and a god king was attractive enough for all these god kings to come to watch. Even primordial realm experts would pay some attention to it. Muku stood on the platform with an extremely sunken face. The ancestor's message continued to resound through his head. That message had basically severed any chance for him to survive, filling him with despair. I really never thought that when I suggested to my disciples to move against Jianqin, not only would they fail to kill him successfully, but I'd even end up doomed instead, abandoned mercilessly by the sect. Didn't the humiliation of the disciples fall onto our Earth Spirit sect's pride? My actions were to recover our pride so that other people would not make use of our name to propel themselves. But in the end, I ruined myself instead. Elder Mu sighed emotionally inside. At that moment, He was filled with indescribable bitterness. However, his gaze became extremely cold soon afterwards. The powerful pressure that belonged to a god king radiated from him. Laws formed chains as they wrapped around him. He stared at Jianchen in great interest as he thought, as a god king, even if I can't win, I can't let Jianchen have it easy in this battle. I will use my full strength. Elder Mu moved. He wielded a wooden staff as he charged at Jianchen with soaring battle intent. The terrifying power of his cultivation poured out from his body, and all of it condensed in the wooden staff at that moment. He extended it towards Jianchen with the God King level laws in an overwhelming manner. Elder Mu did not hold back at all. He used his full strength, so the strike was extraordinarily powerful. When he extended his staff, the terrifying energy it contained actually affected the space within the barrier, making it twist. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect and the Divine King both furrowed their brows outside. Naturally, the two of them could tell that Mu Ku was using his full strength. They did not know if Jianchen would actually be able to deal with such a powerful opponent. Although there were rumors that Jianchen had defeated a god king in the northern region, it was still a rumor in the end. There were details they did not know, such as whether the rumor had been exaggerated or whether the god king was injured. Being able to challenge first place on the Overgod's plaque was only a descriptor of Jianchen's strength. After all, he did not attempt the Overgod's plaque, so just how high he could rank on the Overgod's plaque and whether he really possessed the power to rival first place were unanswered questions. Does Mu Ku plan on disobeying me? The ancestor's heart sank slightly. Cold light flickered in his deep, dark eyes. Jianchen's face did not change at all when he faced Elder Mu's aggressive strike on the platform. He wielded the startling rainbow sword as he protected himself with a layer of light, stabbing out with composure. The strike was simple and ordinary, without any fancy tricks to it at all. However, it was exactly this strike that possessed the deep mysteries of the sword. It conformed to the laws of the sword and coupled with the devastatingly powerful chaotic force, its might had completely surpassed the level of overgods, barely making it to the level of god kings. Even though it had only barely made it to the level of god kings, it was enough to rival early god kings due to the various advantages of the chaotic body. At the moment Jianchen and Mu Ku struck out, the elders around the platform all squinted their eyes. Not only did they pay close attention to the battle, but all of them had even expanded the senses of their souls as well, enveloping the entire platform. They wanted to see the battle between the two clearly. They were unwilling to miss out on any detail. At the moment Jianchen and Mu Ku struck out, the elders around the platform all squinted their eyes. Not only did they pay close attention to the battle, but all of them had even expanded the senses of their souls as well, enveloping the entire platform. They wanted to see the battle between the two clearly. They were unwilling to miss out on any detail. This was because this was an outstanding battle where an overgod challenged a god king. Even with the entire Saints world in perspective, a battle like this was extremely rare. After all, the people who were able to challenge god kings as overgods were basically all supreme prodigies who ranked within the top 10 of the overgod's plaque. Even the Divine King and the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stared at the platform without blinking. They wanted to see if Jianchen possessed the strength he had in the rumors, where he defeated a god king in the northern region as an overgod. Boom! Under the close watch of everyone, Jianchen and Elder Mu's first attacks finally clashed. A violent boom immediately erupted on the platform. Powerful energy wreaked havoc on the platform as a visible current. Jianchen and Mu Ku protected themselves with laws. The light around them flickered as they remained still. Not only had Jianchen received Mu Ku's full-powered strike perfectly, but it also seemed like he had managed to match Mu Ku. Mu Ku's eyes immediately narrowed after the strike. His gaze towards Jianchen had finally become stern. He had truly witnessed Jianchen's strength after the clash. He knew that Jianchen did not enjoy undeserved fame. He truly possessed the battle prowess to face off against a god king. Jianchen's face was emotionless as his eyes shone with cold light, making his gaze as sharp as swords. He used the startling rainbow sword to block Muku's wooden staff as he formed a seal with his other hand. Immediately, a golden strand of sword chi condensed above his head, radiating with powerful sword intent. The sword intent was so powerful that it caused Elder Mu's face to change slightly. He could clearly sense that the golden sword chi above Jian Chen's head was so powerful that it was enough to threaten him. Elder Mu responded extremely quickly. Just when Jian Chen's sword chi had condensed, he bellowed out, and he suddenly shot backwards. At the same time, the wooden staff in his hand danced. The power of laws wove together, rapidly condensing into a huge piece of wood. The appearance of the piece of wood was accompanied with the might of the world. The energy it contained was so powerful that it was enough to make the expression of any early god king in the Earth Spirit sect change. Jian Chen's Daluo sword had directly forced Muku to use his battle skill. Muku is actually using a battle skill. It looks like Jian Chen really does have some ability. He can actually force a god king into using a battle skill as an overgod. No wonder he's known as someone who can challenge the first place on the overgod's plaque. He is indeed very powerful. Jian Chen's reputation is deserved. So what if he deserves the reputation he possesses? Although prodigies who rank towards the top of the overgod's plaque can kill god kings, those are only ordinary god kings. Muku is no ordinary god king. He has comprehended the various cultivation methods and battle skills of our Earth Spirit sect. Although his strength isn't enough for him to rank amongst the top of early god kings, he's still extraordinary. That's right. If Muku did not use a battle skill, Jian Chen would indeed have the power to reach a stalemate against Muku. However, since Muku is using a battle skill, Jian Chen's defeat is certain. The many observing elders of the Earth Spirit sect sighed in amazement. This really was the first time they had seen such a powerful overgod, where he could hold his ground against a god king and even force him into using a battle skill. After all, they had only heard legends of overgods fighting god kings. And these legends were mostly exaggerated. However, the gaze of the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect could not help but become slightly sunken when he saw how Muku not only disobeyed his orders, but he had even become bolder as the battle went on. Go! At this moment, Muku called out. As he extended his finger, the huge piece of wood shot off as a streak of green light towards Jian Chen with unbelievable speed. Boom! The huge piece of wood collided with the golden sword chi, erupting with a deafening sound. The entire platform shook heavily from their strike while even the ground had cracked. However, Jian Chen's attacks were as intense as a storm. Before the effects of the previous attack had completely settled down, another attack would come. When the sword chi collided with the huge piece of wood, he became covered with light. Afterwards, he turned into a bolt of lightning and suddenly shot off with unbelievable speed. How is Jian Chen so powerful? He even stopped my battle skill, and he's only an overgod. Muku was amazed by Jian Chen's strength. He knew that the ancestor had ordered him to throw the battle, but he did not want to lose in such a miserable way. Originally, he believed he could rely on his cultivation as a god king to heavily injure Jian Chen in an overwhelming manner before forfeiting before everyone, so Jian Chen had defeated him. He wanted to show everyone just how helpless and without a choice he was to choose defeat. He did not want to truly lose to Jian Chen in battle. However, he had never thought that Jian Chen's strength would completely exceed his expectations. He was already using his full strength, and he had even used a battle skill, yet Jian Chen still managed to match him evenly, preventing him from gaining the upper hand at all. However, just when Muku was amazed, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Up ahead, a streak of light suddenly shot over at an unbelievable speed, punching through Elder Mu's body instantly. It was fast, simply too fast. The streak of light was so fast that even Muku was unable to catch a glimpse of it. He only managed to find it with the senses of his soul, but it was impossible for him to react due to how close and fast the streak of light was. Muku stood there frozen. He lowered his head and stared at the bowl-sized hole in his chest. He refused to accept this outcome. What secret technique did Jian Chen use earlier to move so quickly? The elders observing the battle were all shocked as well. They had never expected something like this. It's Mu Ku's defeat. The ancestors stood up and declared the outcome of the battle. At the same time, he finally let out a breath of relief inside. Jianchen, according to our earlier agreement, Mu Ku's life belongs to you, the ancestor said to Jianchen as he removed the barrier around the platform. Jianchen, are you fine? The divine king appeared before Jianchen silently and asked in concern. Thank you for your concern, your majesty. I'm fine, said Jianchen. Then he looked at Mu Ku. A cold light flickered through his eyes. Mu Ku turned around in dejection and looked at Jianchen gloomily. He said, Jianchen, do it? As he said that, he closed his eyes. All his hopes vanished at that moment. Brother Jianchen, please show mercy. We will be eternally grateful if you spare Mu Ku's life. Brother Jianchen, please stay your hand. We are willing to make it up to you in different ways as long as you spare Mu Ku's life. All the elders pleaded for mercy. Even the sect master looked at the ancestor, hoping he would step forward to save Mu Ku. God Kings were the pillars of support of the Earth Spirit sect. They were extremely important. The ancestor remained emotionless and said nothing. Jianchen stared at Mu Ku. The light in his eyes flickered, and after a while of thought, he said slowly, Mu Ku, I'll give you two choices. The first is that I can kill you right now and disperse your soul, reducing your arduous cultivation of countless years to nothing. The second is that you will immediately swear to protect my Tian Yuan clan for 10,000 years. You will recover your freedom after those 10 millennia. Jianchen's surprising suggestion stunned everyone present. Even the divine king was extremely surprised. Jianchen's surprising suggestion stunned everyone present. Even the divine king was extremely surprised. However, all the elder who pleaded for Mu Ku became delighted soon afterwards. To them, protecting the Tian Yuan clan for 10,000 years was nothing compared to Mu Ku's life. Every single God King had lived for a very long time. Who knew how many millennia they had lived for? As a result, 10 millennia was just too short in their eyes. The sect master finally let out a sigh of relief inside as well. Even though he felt like it was an extremely disgraceful and humiliating matter for a God King to guard an overgod's clan for 10,000 years, the disgrace and humiliation was nothing compared to Mu Ku's life. Moreover, this overgod was no ordinary overgod. Rather, it was one that possessed extraordinary strength and could truly challenge the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque. Once an overgod like that became a God King, they would definitely be able to make it onto the God King's throne. They might even be able to challenge primordial realm experts as God Kings. Guarding the clan of a supreme overgod like this for 10,000 years was not necessarily embarrassing. Elder Mu, stop hesitating. Agree to it. Many of the God Kings, including the sect master, urged Mu Ku secretly. On the platform, Mu Ku stood there with a pale face. He was gloomy as he stared at Jianchen in a gloomy daze. Naturally, he had heard the many messages from his fellow elders, but getting him, a mighty God King, to guard someone else's clan for 10,000 years was something extremely difficult to accept. Elder Mu stood on the platform in thought for a very long time. He was in a serious dilemma. In the end, he slowly turned his head and looked at the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood in the distance calmly. He showed no particular emotion at all. In the end, Elder Mu looked at Jianchen again. With mixed feelings, he looked at this person who was only an overgod, yet possessed battle prowess so great that even he could not rival. He sighed helplessly inside before saying with some sorrow, I'll guard your clan for 10,000 years. This short sentence had taken a lot of energy for Mu Ku to say. He seemed to have withered after saying that as if he had lost his soul. He was completely dejected. Since the grievance has been resolved, it's time for us to go. Sang 2, we can catch up some other time, the Divine King said to the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect clasped his fist at the Divine King. After a simple conversation, he bid farewell to the Divine King. Afterwards, the Divine King and Jianchen climbed back onto the carriage and shot off under the gazes of the many elders and disciples. Elder Mu did not leave with them. He would be settling down in the Tianyuan clan after he departed, and he would guard the clan for 10,000 years. As a result, there were matters he had to take care of before he left. Mu Ku, come and see me, the ancestor said to Mu Ku before drifting off. On the highest peak within the mountain ranges of the Earth Spirit sect, origin energy had formed a mist that curled around the mountain top, obscuring it, making it seem like it reached into the clouds. This mountain peak was the symbol of the essence of the Earth Spirit sect, as well as the very backbone that supported the prosperous sect. It was where the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect cultivated. At this moment, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect stood by a cliff on the top of the mountain. He gazed into the distance deeply as the wind there whistled, buffeting his long, silver hair and clothes. Behind him stood the current sect master and a dispirited Mu Ku. Mu Ku, do you know what I wanted you to be defeated? The ancestor said calmly with his back towards Mu Ku. However, the calm voice was filled with some helplessness. I did not know originally, but I understood afterwards. It's because the primordial realm expert behind Jianqin is very powerful, said Mu Ku. Ancestor, do you know the identity of the primordial realm expert behind Jianqin? The sect master asked. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect let out a long sigh. I don't know who the primordial realm expert behind Jianqin is, but she's not someone our Earth Spirit sect can afford to offend. She's so powerful that she only needs a simple gesture to destroy our Earth Spirit sect. As he said that, the ancestor could not help but think about what had happened 3 days ago. Back then, when he was cultivating in his secret room, a beautiful woman in white clothes had appeared before him silently. If it were not for the fact that the woman had purposefully let out her presence and alarmed him, he probably would not have known that an outsider had intruded on the secret room he had covered with formations even if he died. Although the woman did not touch him, the presence she gave off was so powerful that the ancestor was still able to recall it like it was new. He would never forget that presence. Before it, he could not even resist as if he stood before a chaotic prime. He felt as insignificant as an ant. He did not doubt at all that the woman possessed the terrifying strength to obliterate the Earth Spirit sect with a simple gesture. His Earth Spirit sect could never afford to offend such a powerful expert. Both Elder Mu and the current sect master were shocked when they heard the ancestor's words. They had all heard that there was a primordial realm expert behind Jianqin, but they never thought that she possessed strength that was so terrifying that even their ancestor would be so frightened. Do you understand now? A sliver of bitterness appeared on the ancestor's face. He said helplessly, we can't offend the person behind Jianqin, but we still have to keep our pride. If we directly give in, it'll damage our name if news of the matter makes it out. This was why I wanted you to lose to Jianqin in the battle before everyone. That way, not only would Jianqin get the explanation he deserves, but the expert behind him would also not be offended, and we would be able to keep our pride. Although it's not a very glorious matter for a god king to lose to an overgod, Jianqin has already defeated a god king in the northern region. He already possesses the strength to challenge first place on the overgod's plaque. Losing to a supreme overgod like that is nothing disgraceful. Mu Ku, go tidy your things. Once you're ready, set off and protect the Tianyuan clan for 10,000 years. Yes, ancestor, Mu Ku said politely. Warmth filled his heart. Now, he finally understood why the ancestor had told him that only defeat was accepted in his battle against Jianqin. As it turned out, an expert who could easily destroy the entire Earth Spirit sect backed up Jianqin. No wonder the ancestor had made a decision like that. After the sect master and Mu Ku departed, the ancestor stood on the edge of the cliff in thought for a while. Afterwards, a fragment of jade immediately appeared in his hand with a single movement. He used the power of his soul to engrave information onto the jade fragment. A while later, he suddenly looked into the distance and waved his hand, tossing out the jade fragment. Immediately, the jade fragment turned into a streak of white light, shooting off with unbelievable speed. It instantly disappeared. Several middle-aged men appeared silently within the miasma-shrouded depths of the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair. They hovered in the air as they stared down with sunken faces. The mountains below them had already collapsed. There was rubble everywhere, and it was a mess. In the loose rubble, there were several huge figures that could be clearly seen laying on the ground. Even though they were already dead, quite a powerful pressure still leaked out from their bodies. Every single one of them was a late god king before they died. Who did this? Who has stolen my flower of ways? A middle-aged man in violet and golden robes at the very front currently stared downwards coldly as he said through gritted teeth. This middle-aged man was the 9th prince of the Blood Sun Empire. 9th prince, I've already sent people to investigate, but this relates to a primordial realm expert after all. It'll take some time to find out some things. However, I believe some leads will be found very soon, a god king said carefully from behind the 9th prince. Speed up the investigation. I want to learn about this primordial realm expert in the shortest amount of time possible. So what if you're a primordial realm expert? You've taken my flower of ways. The 9th prince's gaze was cold. He had already reached peak god king and was only a step away from the primordial realm. Originally, he would have been able to take this step easily with the flower of ways, and he would not have to waste so much time for it. However, now that the flower of ways had been taken away, it would take him much, much longer to reach the primordial realm. At this moment, a white piece of jade shot through the air, directly arriving before the 9th prince. The 9th prince stared at the piece of jade calmly and slowly grabbed it. He said, "This probably came from a primordial realm expert. It seems like it's from the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire. Looking at its direction, it should be from the one in the Earth Spirit sect. 9th prince, the ancestor of the Earth Spirit sect has sent us a jade slip. Does he know something?" One of the people behind the 9th prince asked. "Let's hope so," the 9th prince said coldly before extending the senses of his soul into the jade slip. Very soon, he looked through all of its contents, and a gleam of cold light flickered through his eyes. He crushed the jade slip and said emotionlessly, "Let's go to the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian." Jian Chen directly returned to the Tian Yuan clan. As soon as he returned, he could clearly sense that the atmosphere of the clan seemed to have become. It was especially energetic, filled with great joy. "Patriarch, you've finally returned. Shiyu has broken through and become an overgod." Mo Ling saw Jian Chen in the distance and immediately ran over in high spirits. The Tian Yuan clan gaining another overgod was definitely something worthy of celebration. This was because in the current divine kingdom of Pingtian, overgods were supreme rulers of provinces. Shiyu. As soon as Shiyu was mentioned, Jian Chen could not help but think back to the embroidered box he had given to Princess Tian during the time he had spent in the northern region. It has already been so long, yet there's still no news. I wonder whether my guess is wrong or the princess still hasn't given the box to the Shi Emperor or the Empress, Jian Chen thought. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.